You found the Stealth Podcast. Tonight, we'll travel through dark and lonely stories. Where in the world are you watching from? What time is it there? Subscribe and leave your like to support us. Let's begin. I'm Elias Carter, 29 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. Been a Vanlife guy for about 2 years now. Converted this beat-up Dodge Sprinter into my rolling home. It's got a bed, a little kitchen, and enough solar power to keep me off the grid. I'm not some hippie chasing sunsets, though. I just like the freedom. No rent, no neighbors, no bullshit. Last week, I decided to take a solo trip up to South Canada. It's only a few hours north of me, and I'd heard about this quiet spot near Lake Simcoe. Perfect for parking the van and chilling for a couple nights. The drive up was smooth, just me and the hum of the engine. I've got this playlist of old rock tunes, Zeppelin, mostly. That keeps me company. Crossing the border was a breeze. The guard barely glanced at my passport. By the time I rolled into South Canada, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky this bloody orange. Lake Simcoe's got these little pull-offs along the shore, and I found one tucked behind some pines. It's not exactly legal to camp here, but I'm stealthy. Blackout curtains, no lights, no trace. I parked, cracked a beer, and leaned back in my fold-out chair outside the van. The air's crisp up here, smells like pine and damp earth. It's quiet, too, except for the water lapping against the rocks. I figured I'd cook some ramen later, maybe scroll through my phone till the signal crapped out. Living like this, you get used to being alone. It's peaceful mostly, but something about this spot felt off. Not scary, not yet, just a little itch in the back of my mind. The van's my fortress, you know? I've got locks on the doors, a tire iron stashed under the bed just in case. Never needed it, but it's there. I've parked in sketchy lots before, outside truck stops, down back roads, but this place felt different. Maybe it's the way the trees crowd in, blocking the moonlight, or how the lake's so still it looks like glass. I shook it off, though. I'm not some paranoid rookie jumping at every rustle in the bushes. After dinner, I climbed into the van and locked up for the night. The bed's cozy, piled with blankets cause it gets cold up here. I was scrolling through pics of the trip, some shots of the border, the lake, when I noticed my phone battery was draining fast. Weird, since I'd charged it in the van earlier. I plugged it into the solar setup, but the screen flickered. Probably just the cold messing with it. Happens sometimes. Lying there, I started thinking about why I even came up here. Work's been slow. I do freelance graphic design, and I needed a break from Portland's rain and noise. South Canada seemed like a good escape. I've got a buddy, Nate, who's supposed to meet me in a couple days. He's this wiry guy, 32, all tattoos and bad jokes. Lives in Seattle, but he's got family near here. Said he'd bring some gear and we'd fish or something. The night settled in, heavy and dark. I'm used to the van creaking as it cools down, the little pops and groans of metal. But then I heard something else, a faint splash from the lake. Not a fish, not a wave. More like something heavy hitting the water. I sat up, peering through the curtain slit. Nothing but black out there. Probably a log or a deer, I told myself. Nature's full of random crap like that. I tried to sleep, but my brain wouldn't shut off. You ever get that feeling like you're being watched? Not horror movie style, just this nagging sense that the world's paying too much attention to you? I chalked it up to being in a new place. Vanlife teaches you to roll with the punches. Flat tires, dead batteries, weird vibes. It's all part of the deal. By midnight, I was drifting off, the beer and ramen doing their job. The last thing I remember is the sound of the wind picking up, rattling the pines. It's funny how you can be so alone out here, miles from anyone, and still feel like you're not the only one awake. That splash stuck with me, though. Couldn't shake it. Morning hit me like a slap, gray light sneaking through the curtains, cold seeping into my bones. I crawled out of bed, breath fogging in the van, and fired up the propane heater. South Canada's got that damp chill that sticks to you, you know? I brewed some coffee on my little stove, the hiss of the burner cutting through the silence. Outside, Lake Simcoe looked flat and lifeless, like it was holding its breath. That splash from last night was still nagging at me, but daylight made it feel less creepy. I stepped out to stretch, boots crunching on pine needles. The air smelled wet, heavy with that lake scent. My phone was dead, completely kaput, even after charging. That's a first. The solar setups never failed me before, and I've got a decent battery bank. I popped the hood, Checked the wires. Everything looked fine. Maybe the cold fried something. Annoying, but I've got a backup power brick somewhere in the storage bins. Nate's supposed to roll in tomorrow, but with no signal out here, I can't text him. I figured I'd drive into town later, charge up, grab some supplies. South Canada's got this little strip called Innisfil, maybe 20 minutes away. I'd seen signs for it on the way in, gas station, Tim Hortons, the usual. For now, though, I wanted to poke around the lake. Call it curiosity or stupidity, but I couldn't let that splash go. I grabbed my jacket and a flashlight. Daylight's fine, but these woods get dark under the trees. The shore's rocky, littered with driftwood and slimy stones. I walked maybe 100 yards, scanning the water. Nothing weird, just reeds and a couple ducks floating out there. Then I saw it, a chunk of something bobbing near the edge. Looked like fabric, dark and soggy. I fished it out with a stick. A sleeve, torn off a jacket. Disturbing as hell, but it could have been trash, right? Lakes swallow all kinds of junk. Back at the van, I tossed the sleeve in a plastic bag. Didn't know why I kept it. Evidence, maybe? My brain was spinning dumb theories. Drunk fisherman, lost hiker, whatever. I'm not a detective, but finding that felt like stepping into something scary I didn't sign up for. I decided to stay put for the day, though. Running off to town now seemed like overreacting, and I didn't want to burn gas for nothing. By afternoon, the sky turned bruised purple, clouds rolling in thick. I cooked some eggs, trying to keep busy. The van's my bubble, my safe spot, but the vibe out here was shifting. I kept glancing at the windows, expecting, what? A face? A hand? Get a grip, Elias. Still, I double-checked the locks. Vanlife's taught me to trust my gut, and mine was muttering something's off. Then the battery bank crapped out. I dug it out, plugged it in, nothing. Dead as my phone. Now I'm thinking this isn't just bad luck. 2 power sources tanking in 24 hours. That's horror movie territory. I've got candles and a headlamp, so I'm not screwed yet, but it's unsettling. I started wondering if I should bail, head to Innisfil early. Nate wouldn't know where to find me, though, and I'd look like an idiot ditching over a couple glitches. Dusk fell fast, the lake disappearing into the gloom. I was sitting there, headlamp on, flipping through an old paperback, when I heard it, a low hum. Not wind, not waves. It came from the trees, steady and deep, like a machine idling. I killed the light and peeked out. Nothing but shadows. My heart kicked up, but I told myself it's probably a boat or a car on some distant road. Still, it felt close, too close. I sat there in the dark, listening. The hum stopped after a minute, but the quiet was worse. You ever notice how silence can feel loud? Like it's pressing on you? I grabbed the tire iron, set it next to me. Not saying I'm scared. Okay, maybe a little, but I'm not taking chances. Something's brewing out there, and I'm stuck in the middle of it. Darkness swallowed the van, thick and heavy, like I was drowning in it. I sat there, tire iron in hand, staring at the blackout curtains like they'd sprout teeth. That hum from earlier? Gone. But the quiet wasn't comforting, it was suffocating. South Canada's woods have this way of closing in, pines looming like they're leaning over to whisper something nasty. I kept the headlamp off, figuring light might draw attention. Dumb, maybe, but my gut was screaming to stay low. I caught a whiff of something, sharp, metallic, like blood or rust. It hit me out of nowhere, cutting through the pine smell. I sniffed my jacket, the seat, nothing. It was coming from outside. My brain flashed to that soggy sleeve I'd found. What if it wasn't trash? What if it was a piece of someone? I shook my head. Too many late-night podcasts, Elias. Still, I cracked the window an inch, just to listen. Big mistake. The air rushed in, cold and wet, and with it came a sound. A gurgle, low and wet, like someone choking on their own spit. It was faint, but it was there, out by the lake. My skin prickled, every hair standing up. I slammed the window shut, heart hammering. I'm not a jumpy guy. Hell, I've slept through storms that'd wake the dead, but this was different. This was disturbing, the kind of scary that sticks in your throat. I grabbed my flashlight, flicked it on low, and aimed it at the floor. No way I was shining it outside. Not yet. The van felt smaller, like the walls were inching closer. I kept replaying that gurgle. Maybe an animal? A frog or some weird bird. But it didn't fit. It sounded human. I thought about Nate, still a day away. If I could hold out till he got here, we'd laugh this off over beers. Yeah, right. Then the van rocked. Just a little, like something brushed it. I froze. beam trembling on the floorboards. It wasn't wind, the trees weren't swaying. I clicked the light off, holding my breath. There it was again, a nudge, harder this time, from the driver's side. My mind raced. Bear, drunk local, psycho? I've seen enough horror flicks to know this is where the idiot checks outside and gets axed. I stayed put, clutching the tire iron like it was a lifeline. Minutes dragged by, each one stretching into forever. Then I heard it, scratching. Slow, deliberate, along the metal. Not claws, not branches. Fingernails. Long, scraping drags, like someone testing the van's skin. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a bear. I whispered, shit, 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 under my breath, trying to keep it together. The sound circled, moving to the back doors, then stopped. Dead silence. I couldn't sit there anymore. I had to look. I crawled to the rear window, peeling the curtain back a sliver. The lake was a black mirror, reflecting nothing. But there, near the shore, something moved. Tall, hunched, too thin to be normal. It wasn't clear, just a shape, but it wasn't right. My chest tightened, a cold sweat breaking out. It turned, slow, like it knew I was watching. I dropped the curtain, scrambling back. The smell hit again, stronger, blood and rot, thick enough to gag on. I clapped a hand over my mouth, fighting the urge to puke. Whatever was out there, it wasn't some lost camper. This was wrong, scary wrong, the kind of horror you don't walk away from unchanged. I fumbled for my keys, hands shaking. The van's old, but she'd start. I could peel out, hit Innisfil, figure this out later. But then the back doors rattled, hard, like something yanked them. The locks held, thank God, but the whole frame shook. I yelped, dropping the keys. They clattered under the seat, and I dove for them, cursing myself. Whatever's out there, it's not sneaking around anymore. It's here, and it wants in. The back doors rattled again, a bone-jarring bang that echoed in my skull. I snatched the keys from under the seat, fingers slick with sweat, and lunged for the driver's side. My van's old, but she's my ticket out of this nightmare. I jammed the key in, twisted, nothing. The engine coughed, sputtered, then died. Come on, you piece of junk, I hissed, pumping the gas. Another bang, this time from the roof. Something heavy landed up there, denting the metal. I'm in full-on horror mode now, heart slamming against my ribs. I tried again, and the engine roared to life. Thank God. Headlights flared, cutting through the dark, and I floored it. Tires spun on the gravel, kicking up dirt as I peeled out from the lake pull-off. Whatever was on the roof slid, scrabbling for grip. I swerved hard, fishtailing, and heard it tumble off with a wet thud. Didn't look back, couldn't. The road was a blur, pines whipping past, my knuckles white on the wheel. That smell, blood and rot, clung to the air, even inside. I cracked the window, gulping fresh air, but it didn't help. My brain was screaming, Innisfil, get to Innisfil. It's 20 minutes if I gun it, less if I don't hit a deer. The van's shaking, suspension groaning, but she's holding. I kept glancing at the mirrors, nothing but black behind me. Maybe I lost it. Maybe it's gone. Yeah, and maybe I'm the king of Canada. Then the headlights caught something, up ahead, blocking the road. That hunched shape, too thin, too tall, just standing there. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching, and the van skidded to a stop. It didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared, or at least I think it did. No face, no eyes, just a void where a head should be. My gut twisted, a cold, scary certainty sinking in. This thing's not human. I threw the van into reverse, flooring it again. Backing up blinds a bitch. Rear view's useless in this dark, but I didn't care. The thing started moving, loping toward me, all jerky and wrong. I spun the wheel, swung the van around, and punched it forward, off the road into the trees. Branches snapped, scraping the sides, but I kept going. There's a dirt track somewhere around here. I'd seen it earlier. If I could find it, I might shake this freak. The van bounced hard, something cracking underneath, but I didn't stop. That gurgling sound was back, louder, right outside the passenger window. I risked a look, big mistake. It was there, keeping pace, long arms swinging, skin hanging off like wet rags. I yelled, swerving away, and it slammed into the side, rocking me. Glass cracked, but held. I'm running out of moves here. I hit the dirt track, finally, and gunned it, the van rattling like it's about to fall apart. The thing fell back, or I thought it did. My headlights were flickering, engine whining, but I couldn't slow down. Every second felt like a gamble, life or death hanging on this rust bucket holding together. South Canada's woods stretched on forever, a maze of dark and danger. Sweat stung my eyes, my breath coming in gasps. I didn't know where I was going anymore, just away. The track twisted, narrowed, and I kept pushing, praying for a road, a house, anything. That's when I saw the lights, faint ahead. Innisfil, a cabin, didn't matter. I aimed for them, the van screaming in protest, and that gurgle faded behind me. Maybe I'd make it. Maybe. But then the engine cut out, dead, no warning. I coasted, momentum dying, and the van rolled to a stop. Silence crashed in, heavy and final. I gripped the tire iron, listening. Nothing. No gurgle, no scratches. Just me, panting in the dark, those distant lights taunting me. I wasn't out of this yet. I sat there, engine dead, the van a coffin on wheels. Those lights ahead, maybe a mile off, were my only shot. I grabbed the tire iron, my flashlight, and a half-empty water bottle. No phone, no power, just me and whatever's left of my guts. I popped the door, slow, wincing at the creak. The air hit me, cold, thick with that rot stench. My legs were jelly, but I stepped out, scanning the dark. South Canada's woods were a wall of black around me. The flashlight beam shook in my hand, cutting a thin path down the track. I started walking, fast, keeping the light low. Every snap of a twig, every rustle, had me swinging the beam around. Nothing but trees. I told myself I'd ditch that thing, that I was golden. But you know that feeling when you're lying to yourself? Yeah, it was loud. My sneakers crunched on the dirt, too loud, like I was begging to be found. Those lights grew closer, turned out to be a gas station, glowing like a beacon. Relief hit me hard, but it was shaky. I'd seen enough scary movies to know this is where the twist comes. I kept moving, tire iron ready, the station's neon sign buzzing in the distance. A car sat out front, empty, driver's door open. Weird, but I wasn't stopping to play hero. I just needed a phone, a tow, anything to get me out of this horror show. I was maybe 50 yards out when I tripped, hard. Face planted in the dirt, flashlight skittering away. I cursed, scrambling up, and that's when I saw it, a shoe. Not mine. A beat-up sneaker, caked in mud, lying there like it had been dropped. My beam caught more. Tracks, fresh, leading off into the trees. Human tracks, but dragging, uneven. My stomach lurched. Someone else was out here, and they weren't doing great. I should have kept going. Gas station, safety, done. But I'm an idiot. I swung the light toward the trees, following those tracks. Hello, I called, voice cracking. No answer, just the wind. Against every ounce of sense, I stepped off the track, pushing through branches. The smell got worse, blood, decay, a slaughterhouse stink. I gagged, but kept going, like some dumbass drawn to the edge of a cliff. The tracks led to a clearing, and there it was, Nate's truck. Beat up Tacoma, Seattle plates, parked crooked like he'd rolled in fast. My heart sank. He wasn't supposed to be here till tomorrow, but there it was, door open, keys in the ignition. Nate! I yelled louder. Nothing. Then I saw the blood, smeared across the hood, dripping onto the ground. Fresh, wet, too much. I froze, beam shaking over the truck. That gurgle came back, soft, behind me. I turned, slow, and there it was, the thing, hunched and dripping, holding something. Nate's jacket, torn, soaked red. My scream caught in my throat. It dropped the jacket, lurching forward, and I swung the tire iron. Missed, stumbled back. My flashlight hit the ground, beam spinning wild, lighting up its face for a split second. No eyes, just holes, wet and black. I ran, blind, crashing through trees, branches clawing me. The gas station was close, but my legs were giving out, lungs burning. I heard it behind me, that wet shuffle, gaining. I tripped again, rolled down a slope, and slammed into a rock. Pain exploded in my side, but I crawled, clawing dirt, toward the light. The gurgle was right there, above me, and I felt it. Cold, bony fingers brushing my ankle. Last thing I saw was that neon sign flickering, so close, before something yanked me back into the dark. Should have stayed on the track. Should have never left the van. Nate's gone, and now I'm next. South Canada's got me, and it's not letting go. I'm Mara Hensley, 34 years old, and I call Boise, Idaho home. Been living the van life dream for 3 years now in my tricked-out Ford Transit. High top, solar panels, the works. I'm a photographer, freelance mostly, chasing shots of wild places for magazines and my Insta. It's just me and the road, no ties, no fuss. Last month, I pointed the van north, itching for something rugged, and landed on South Canada. Heard the Georgian Bay area's got killer views, so I figured I'd park up there for a few nights. The drive from Boise was a haul. 2 days of gas station coffee and playlists heavy on Fleetwood Mac. Crossing into Canada felt like a win, the border guard waving me through with a grunt. I hit South Canada late afternoon, the sun sinking fast over Georgian Bay. Found this gravel lot off Highway 400, near Tiny Township. Nothing fancy, just a spot with a view of the water through the trees. It's not exactly a campground, but I'm good at staying under the radar. I pulled in, tires crunching, and killed the engine. The bay's out there, shimmering like it's got secrets, and the air's got that sharp, clean bite. I hopped out, stretched my legs, and snapped a few pics, golden light hitting the waves just right. My van's my sanctuary, bed in the back, little kitchen, even a skylight for stargazing. I've parked in weirder spots than this, deserts, city streets, but something about this place felt heavy. Not scary, just off-kilter. After setting up, I cooked some chili on my stove, the smell filling the van. I've got this routine down. Eat, edit photos, crash. My camera's my baby, a Nikon I've hauled everywhere. I was flipping through shots when I noticed the battery was low. Weird, since I'd charged it yesterday. I plugged it into the van system, but the screen glitched, flickering like bad reception. Figured it was the cold messing with it. Happens up here. Night crept in fast, the kind of dark that swallows everything. I locked the doors, habit, not paranoia, and climbed into bed with a book. The van's cozy, blankets piled high, but I kept catching myself listening. No wind, no waves, just this thick quiet. I've slept through coyotes howling and trucks rumbling, so silence shouldn't bug me. But it did. Felt like the world was holding its breath. I've got a friend, Jess, who might swing by tomorrow. She's 28, a wild card, pink hair, piercings, lives in Toronto. We met at a photo gig last year. Hit it off over cheap beer. She's been texting about meeting up, maybe shooting some night shots together. I told her about this spot, said it'd be perfect. No signal out here, though, so she's on her own finding me. Hope she doesn't flake. Lying there, I started hearing stuff, little taps, like pebbles hitting the van. I sat up, peering out the skylight. Nothing but stars, cold and sharp. Probably acorns or some crap falling from the trees. I laughed it off. Van life's full of random noises, right? Still, I grabbed my pocket knife, set it on the shelf. Never used it for more than cutting apples, but it's there. The tap stopped, and I settled back, eyes heavy. I was drifting off when I heard it, a low, slow creak, like something shifting out by the water. Not the van, not the trees. I cracked an eye, listening harder. It came again, deeper, almost like a groan. My brain said boat, dock, whatever, but my gut wasn't buying it. I pulled the blanket tighter, telling myself it's nothing. Sleep finally took me, but that creak stuck in my head, looping like a bad dream. Out here, alone, you're supposed to feel free. So why did I feel like I just rolled into something I couldn't outrun? Morning slapped me awake with a gray haze leaking through the skylight. I rolled out of bed, shivering. Georgian Bay's got that damp cold that sinks into your bones. I fired up the heater and brewed some tea, the kettle whistling while I rubbed sleep from my eyes. That creak from last night was still rattling around in my head, but daylight made it feel less creepy. I glanced out the window, water flat as a mirror, trees still. South Canada's got a moody beauty, I'll give it that. I stepped outside, camera in hand, to grab some shots. The gravel lot was empty, just me and the van, parked maybe 50 feet from the bay. My Nikon was still acting funky, battery dead, even after charging. I swapped it out, but the spare was low too. That's not normal. I've shot in rain, snow, whatever, and never had gear crap out like this. I shrugged it off. Maybe the humidity's screwing with it. I'd hit a shop in Penetanguishene later, a little town nearby. The air smelled off, though, not just bay water and pine, but something sour, like spoiled meat. I wrinkled my nose, scanning the shore. Nothing obvious, no dead fish, no garbage. Probably a critter croaked in the bushes. I grabbed my boots and decided to scout around, see if I could spot anything worth shooting. The ground was soft, muddy from last night's dew, and I kept an eye out for that creek's source. I wandered down to the water, snapping pics of driftwood and reeds. Then I saw it. Tire tracks, fresh, cutting through the mud toward the trees. Not mine. The van's got wider treads. Someone else had been here, recent. My stomach did a little flip, not scary yet, just weird. Could have been locals, but this spot's off the beaten path. I followed the tracks a bit, curiosity tugging me along. They led to a patch of woods, then stopped cold. No car, no footprints, just gone. I stood there, frowning, when that sour smell hit harder. I gagged, covering my mouth. Something glinted in the brush, a beer can, crushed, half buried. I kicked it loose. Old, rusted, not fresh. Okay, so maybe it's nothing. Still, I hightailed it back to the van, that itch in my gut growing. Back inside, I tried the van's radio for noise, static, dead air. My phone had no bars either, which isn't shocking out here, but it bugged me. Jess was supposed to show, but with no way to ping her, I was flying blind. I could drive into town now, grab supplies, check my gear, but I told her I'd be here. Plus, I'm stubborn, didn't want to bail over a bad vibe and some dead batteries. By noon, clouds rolled in, thick and dark, swallowing the sun. I cooked a sandwich, trying to shake the unease. The van's my bubble, right? Locks are solid, I've got food, water. But that smell kept creeping in, faint but persistent. I cracked a window, and that's when I heard it again. A creak, slow and heavy from the bay. I leaned out, squinting. Nothing moving, just water and shadows. Then the van's lights flickered. Inside, not the headlights. I cursed, flipping switches. Power's fine, solar's topped up, but they blinked again. My skin prickled. I've dealt with glitches before, loose wire, bad fuse. But this felt deliberate, like something was messing with me. I grabbed my knife, set it closer. Not saying I'm freaked. Okay, maybe a little, but I'm not dumb enough to ignore it. Dusk hit early, the sky turning this bruised purple. I sat there, lights off, watching the windows. That creak came again, closer, and this time it wasn't alone. Something splashed, soft but sharp, like a hand slapping water. My heart kicked up. Jess better show soon, 'cause I'm starting to think I parked somewhere I shouldn't have. Night clamped down hard, the kind of dark that presses against the van like it's trying to get in. I sat there, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, staring at the blackout curtains. That splash, sharp, deliberate, kept replaying in my head. South Canada's got this eerie quiet now. No crickets, no wind, just that sour stink seeping through the cracks. I'd locked everything tight, but it didn't feel like enough. My gut was yelling that something's seriously off. I flicked the flashlight on, kept it low, sweeping the floor. The van's my space. Bed, gear, photos pinned up, but it felt foreign, like I'd parked in someone else's nightmare. That creak came again, loud, right outside the back doors. My breath hitched. It wasn't with settling or waves. This was heavy, intentional. I clicked the light off, heart thumping so loud I swore it'd give me away. Then the smell got worse, rotten, wet, like a carcass left out too long. It hit me full force, and I gagged, clapping a hand over my mouth. My brain flashed to those tire tracks, that beer can. What if someone didn't just pass through? What if they didn't leave? I crawled to the side window, peeling the curtain back an inch. The bay was black, but something rippled, small, quick, not a fish. My skin crawled, a cold, scary shiver running through me. The van jolted, sharp, like something rammed it. I yelped, dropping the flashlight. It rolled, beams spinning wild, and I dove for it, hands shaking. Another jolt, this time the passenger side, hard enough to rock me. This isn't a deer or a drunk. It's deliberate, disturbing as hell. I gripped the knife, whispering, "Get it together, Mara." But my voice sounded small, swallowed by the dark. A new sound started. Hiss, gurgle, like air bubbling through mud. It came from under the van, low and wet. I froze, listening, every nerve screaming. Then the floor vibrated, just a little, like something brushed the undercarriage. I'm no mechanic, but I know that's not normal. I thought about Jess, where the hell is she, and wished I'd bailed to Penetanguishene earlier. Too late now. I edged to the driver's seat, keys dangling from my pocket. Maybe I could start the van, peel out, leave this horror show behind. But before I could move, the back doors rattled, hard, metal groaning. The locks held, but the whole frame shook. I bit back a scream, clutching the knife tighter. Something scraped along the side, slow, dragging, like it was feeling its way around. I couldn't sit there. I had to see. I crept to the rear window, heart in my throat, and peeked out. The bay was still, but there, near the shore, something stood. Short, squat, not human, too wide, too low. It glistened, wet and dark, like it had crawled out of the water. My chest tightened, a wave of pure terror washing over me. It turned, jerky, and I swear it looked right at me. The scraping stopped, and for a second, I thought it'd leave. Then the roof creaked, loud, bending under weight. Something was up there. I stumbled back, tripping over my camera bag, and the skylight cracked, sharp, sudden, glass splintering. I yelled, swinging the flashlight up, and caught a glimpse, slimy, pale, fingers clawing at the edge. This isn't a prank. This is real, and it's coming for me. I lunged for the keys, hands slick, panic clawing at me. The van rocked again, harder, and that gurgle rose, loud, right above me. Whatever's out there, it's not sneaking anymore. It's here, and it's pissed. I've got one shot to get out, and I'm not sure it's enough. The skylight shattered, glass raining down, and I dove for the driver's seat, keys slipping in my sweaty hands. That thing on the roof gurgled, wet and close, clawing at the jagged hole. I jammed the key in, twisted. The van roared to life. Thank God. I slammed it into gear and floored it, tires spinning on gravel as I peeled out of that cursed lot. Something thudded off the roof, hitting the ground behind me, but I didn't look, couldn't. My headlights stabbed the dark, trees flashing by like bony fingers. The van rattled, suspension screaming as I tore down the dirt track off Highway 400. That sour stink clung to me, thick in my throat, and I rolled the window down, gulping air. My hands shook on the wheel, but I kept going. Penetanguishene was my lifeline, maybe 15 minutes if I didn't crash. The road twisted, narrow and rough, and I prayed the tires wouldn't blow. Whatever that thing was, I had to outrun it. Then the headlights flickered, dim, bright, dim, like the van was choking. Not now, I yelled, smacking the dash. They steadied, but my gut twisted. That squat, slimy shape flashed in my mind. Those fingers, that gurgle. I glanced at the mirrors, nothing but black, but it didn't feel gone. South Canada's woods stretched endless around me, a trap I'd rolled right into. I pushed the van harder, engine whining. Up ahead, the track split, left toward town, right into deeper woods. I yanked left, tires skidding, and something slammed the passenger side, hard. Glass cracked, spider webbing, and I swerved, barely keeping control. That gurgle was back, right outside, and I saw it. Low, scuttling alongside, keeping pace. My scream tore out, raw and loud. It lunged again, rocking the van, and I veered off-road, branches snapping against the hull. I bounced through the trees, dodging trunks, the van groaning like it'd snap apart. The thing fell back, or I thought it did. My headlights caught a glimpse, wet, pale, dragging itself fast. I hit a clearing, floored it, and aimed for a faint glow. Town lights, maybe. The engine sputtered, coughing, but I coaxed it on, sweat stinging my eyes. Every bump felt like the end, a life or death roll of the dice. The gurgle faded, swallowed by the roar of the van, and I risked a breath. The glow grew, Penetanguishene's outskirts, a gas station flickering in the distance. I laughed, shaky and wild. Maybe I'd make it. But then the steering locked, hard, and the van fishtailed. I fought it, muscles burning, and slammed into a ditch, metal crunching. The airbags popped, smacking me back, and everything went still. I coughed, head spinning, blood trickling from my nose. The engine was dead, headlights out, just the dash glowing weak. I grabbed the knife and flashlight, kicking the door open. That stink hit again, close, too close. I stumbled out, legs wobbly, and swung the beam around. Nothing but trees and dark. The gas station was a quarter mile, tops. I could run it. Had to. Something splashed behind me, loud, from the ditch. I spun, light shaking, and saw ripples, black water churning. My chest tightened, terror clawing up my spine. It wasn't over. I bolted, boots pounding dirt, the station's neon my only hope. The gurgle rose, fast and wet, and I felt it. Something brushing the air behind me, cold and hungry. I ran harder, lungs burning, tears blurring the lights ahead. The ground shook, just once, like it was right on me. I didn't look back, couldn't. The station was so close, but my legs were giving out, every step a gamble. I wasn't sure I'd make it, but I'd be damned if I didn't try. I stumbled into the gas station lot, gravel biting my knees as I fell. The neon buzzed overhead, harsh and bright, and I scrambled up, banging on the locked door. "Help! Somebody!" My voice cracked, hoarse from screaming. A guy inside, clerk, maybe 50, balding, jumped, spilling his coffee. He fumbled with the lock, yelling, "Hold on." I kept the flashlight swinging behind me, beam cutting the dark. Nothing yet, but that gurgle echoed in my head. He yanked the door open, and I shoved past, collapsing against a rack of chips. "Something's out there. Call the cops." I gasped, blood dripping from my nose onto the floor. He stared, wide-eyed, then grabbed a phone. My hands shook, knife still clenched, as I scanned the windows. The lot was empty. Car wrecks, my van in the ditch, but no Jess, no monster. Yet, the clerk muttered into the phone. "Yeah, tiny township, gas station off, 400, hurry." I caught my breath, the horror sinking in. That thing, squat, slimy, wrong, had chased me from Georgian Bay. I'd crashed, lost everything, but I was alive. I laughed, bitter and shaky, wiping my face. "Should have stayed in Boise," I muttered. The clerk tossed me a rag, looking freaked but keeping it together. Then I remembered, Jess. She was coming tonight, pink hair and all, straight into that mess. "My friend, she's out there," I blurted, lunging for the door. The clerk grabbed my arm. "Cops are coming. Ladies, stay put." I shook him off, panic overriding sense. "She doesn't know. She's got no clue." I'd told her to meet me at that lot, and now it was a death trap. I bolted outside, flashlight dimming, knife ready. The dark swallowed me again, that sour stink creeping back. I yelled, "Jess, get out of here." My voice bounced off the trees, unanswered. Then I saw it. Headlights, weaving down the track. Her Jeep, beat up and loud, rolling right toward where I'd parked. My stomach dropped. I waved the light, screaming, "Turn around." The Jeep slowed, Jess's silhouette in the window, confused, probably thinking I'd lost it. Then the ground shook, a wet thud behind me. I spun, beam catching it. Low, glistening, dragging itself from the ditch. It gurgled, loud, and charged, not at me, at her. "Jess, go," I shrieked, throwing the flashlight. It cracked against the thing, slowing it a second, but not enough. She gunned the engine, tires spinning, but it was fast, too fast. It slammed her Jeep, glass shattering, and the whole thing flipped, rolling into the trees. Metal screamed, then silence. I ran toward it, legs burning, but that thing turned, blocking me. No face, just a gaping maw, dripping black. I swung the knife, hit something soft, wet, and it screeched, recoiling. I dodged past, reaching the wreck. Jess was inside, limp, blood streaking her pink hair. "No, no, no." I yanked the door, cutting my hands on glass, but she wasn't moving. The gurgle closed in, and I turned, too late. It grabbed my leg, cold and strong, pulling me down. I kicked, stabbed, but it dragged me back, the gas station lights fading as I screamed. Last thing I saw was Jess's Jeep, crumpled, and that clerk running out, too far to help. I'd gone back for her. My big, stupid mistake, and now we're both gone. South Canada took us, and it's keeping us forever. I'm Riley Voss, 31 years old, and I'm from Reno, Nevada. Been living in my converted Chevy Express for about 18 months now. Bed, mini fridge, solar setup, the whole deal. I'm a mechanic by trade, picking up odd jobs wherever I roll, and the van's my ticket to dodge rent and keep moving. Last week, I decided to head down to South California, chasing warmer nights and a break from Reno's dry chill. Bakersfield caught my eye, flat, sprawling, a good spot to park and tinker with the van. The drive south was a grind, 6 hours of desert highways and gas station burritos, Metallica blasting to keep me awake. I hit Bakersfield just as the sun dipped, the sky turning this dusty pink over the oil fields. Found a quiet lot off Highway 58, near some warehouses, nothing fancy, just cracked asphalt and a chain link fence. It's not legal to sleep here, but I've got blackout curtains and a knack for staying low-key. I parked, popped the side door, and cracked a soda, letting the evening heat settle around me. Bakersfield's got this gritty hum, trucks rumbling in the distance, the faint smell of oil and tar. I like it. Feels real, lived in. The van's my castle, grease-stained tools, a mattress I rigged up, even a little fan for nights like this. I figured I'd crash here a couple days, maybe fix up a locals ride for cash. After dinner, canned ravioli heated on my camp stove. I kicked back with my phone, scrolling through pics of the trip. Battery was fine, signal spotty, but workable. I've got a buddy, Cal, who might swing by tomorrow. He's 35, a wiry dude with a buzz cut, lives in Fresno. We go way back, worked a garage together years ago. Said he'd bring some beers and we'd shoot the shit. Night rolled in, thick and warm, the kind that sticks to your skin. I locked the doors, habit from sketchier stops, and climbed into bed. The lot was dead quiet, just the occasional hum of a car on 58. I'm used to sleeping through noise, semis, coyotes, whatever, but this silence felt heavy, like it was watching me. I brushed it off. Vanlife's full of weird vibes sometimes. I was half asleep when I heard it. A low thud, metal on metal, somewhere outside. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, and listened. Nothing for a minute, then another, closer, like someone tapped the fence. My brain said stray dog, drunk, whatever, but my gut tightened. I grabbed a wrench from my tool bag, better than nothing, and peeked through the curtain. Just shadows and the glint of chain link. It stopped, and I laughed at myself, settling back. Probably some punk messing around. Bakersfield's got its rough edges. Heard stories of break-ins, tweakers, nothing new. I've parked in worse spots and walked away fine. Still, I kept the wrench close, just in case. You don't last out here without a little caution. Sleep tugged at me again, but that thud lingered in my head. I started thinking about why I even came down here. Reno's slow this time of year, sure, but Bakersfield's not exactly a vacation. Maybe I just needed the road. The van creaked as it cooled, a familiar sound, and I let it lull me. Whatever was out there, it'd be gone by morning. Then I heard voices, low, muffled, too far to make out words. My eyes snapped open. Not cops, not kids, something else. I stayed still, listening, and they faded. Could be nothing, but out here, alone, nothing feels like nothing for long. Morning hit me with a blast of dry heat sneaking through the van's vents. I rolled out of bed, stiff and sweaty, and fired up my little fan while I brewed coffee on the stove. Those voices from last night stuck with me. Low, creepy, like they were plotting something. Bakersfield's got that industrial sprawl, all warehouses and dust, and I figured it was just some late-night weirdos. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling I'd parked in the wrong spot. I stepped outside, wrench tucked in my belt, and checked the van. No scratches, no dents, just the usual grime. The lot was empty, sun baking the asphalt, but the air had this faint whiff of something sharp, gasoline, maybe, or sweat. My phone was at half battery, signal still crap. Cal was supposed to roll in later, but with no way to text him, I was on my own. I thought about moving, finding a legit campground, but cash is tight, and this spot's free. I grabbed my toolbox and popped the hood, tinkering with the alternator to kill time. Keeps my hands busy, my head clear. That's when I noticed it. Tire tracks in the dirt near the fence. Fresh, narrow, not mine. Someone been here, close. My gut did a little twist, not scary yet, just off. Could be a delivery truck, sure, but this lot's dead end, no reason to roll through. By noon, the heat was brutal, shimmering off the warehouses. I took a break, chugging water, when I heard a clank. Metal on metal, same as last night, from behind the fence. I squinted over there, saw nothing but shadows and rust. Probably pipes or junk shifting, right? But then it came again, rhythmic, like someone tapping out a code. I grabbed my wrench tighter, debating whether to check it out. I should have stayed put, but I'm a nosy bastard. I walked over, boots crunching, and peered through the chain link. Empty lot, weeds, a busted pallet, nothing weird. Then I saw it. A cigarette butt, still smoldering, right by the fence. Fresh. My skin prickled. Someone was here, watching, and they just left. I backed off, fast, that itch in my gut turning into a knot. Back at the van, I tried the radio, static, then a garbled voice, gone quick. Power flickered too, lights dimming for a second. I cursed, checking the solar setup. Everything's hooked up fine. This isn't mechanical, it's something else. I've fixed rigs in worse shape than this, but now I'm wondering if I should bail to a truck stop off 58. Cal'd find me eventually, but I didn't want to look like I'm running scared. Dusk crept in, the sky turning this sickly orange over Bakersfield. I cooked some beans, keeping the curtains cracked to watch the lot. That clank came again, closer, by the warehouse wall. My heart kicked up, but I told myself it's nothing, city noise, that's all. Then I heard footsteps, heavy, dragging, circling the van. Not fast, not sneaky. Just there, like they wanted me to know. I killed the lights, gripping the wrench, and peeked out. Two shapes, tall, lanky, moving slow near the fence. Too dark to see faces, but they weren't stumbling like drunks. One stopped, turned my way, and I swear he stared right at me. My breath caught, a cold, disturbing chill running down my spine. They didn't yell, didn't wave, just stood there, then shuffled off into the shadows. I sat back, heart pounding, trying to laugh it off. Tweakers, maybe, scoping the van for a smash and grab. Happens in places like this. But those footsteps stuck with me, that slow drag, like they had all the time in the world. I locked the doors again, double-checked, and kept the wrench on my lap. Cal better show soon, 'cause I'm starting to think I'm not alone out here, and it's not the friendly kind of company. Night slammed down on Bakersfield like a lid, the lot turning into this black pit around my van. I sat there, wrench in hand, curtains cracked just enough to watch those shapes disappear. My chest was tight, that slow drag of their footsteps echoing in my skull. South California's got its share of weirdos, but this felt different, scary, deliberate, like I'd stumbled into something I wasn't supposed to see. The air stank of oil and something sour, creeping in despite the locked doors. I kept the lights off, barely breathing, listening hard. Then it hit, a sharp bang on the side of the van, metal denting under a fist. I jumped, cursing loud, and gripped the wrench tighter. Another bang, back doors this time, rattling the locks. My heart slammed against my ribs, pure horror kicking in. This wasn't random. They knew I was here, and they weren't screwing around. I scrambled to the driver's seat, keys shaking in my hand. Voices started, low, rough, right outside. "He's in there." One growled, all gravel and spit. Another laughed, high and jagged, like a hyena. My skin crawled, a cold sweat breaking out. I peeked through the windshield. 3 of them now, tall and wiry, faces smudged in the dark. One held a crowbar, tapping it on the ground, slow, like he was counting down. This wasn't a robbery. This was something disturbing, something personal. The van rocked, hard, like they'd rammed it. I yelled, "Back off," but my voice cracked, weak against their cackling. They didn't answer, just kept circling, boots dragging, crowbar scraping the hull. I twisted the key, engine sputtered, died. "Come on, you bastard," I hissed, trying again. It caught, roaring, and I flicked the headlights on. Caught them full beam. Pale faces, sunken eyes, grinning like wolves. My stomach dropped. One lunged, smashing the crowbar into the passenger window. Glass cracked, holding just, and I floored it, tires screeching. They scattered, but not far, shadows darting along the fence. I peeled out of the lot, heart hammering, the van shaking like it had fall apart. Those grins burned into me, scary as hell, like they weren't just after my stuff. They wanted me. I aimed for Highway 58, anywhere but here. The banging didn't stop. Something hit the roof, denting it down. I swerved, glancing up, and saw a hand. Filthy, clawing, through the busted vent. They'd climbed on. I yelled, slamming the brakes, and it slid off, thudding behind me. Mirrors showed them running, fast, keeping up. This wasn't human speed. These guys were jacked, wired, wrong. My gut screamed I'd parked in their turf, and they didn't like guests. I gunned it again, the engine whining, headlights flickering. The lot was gone, warehouses blurring past, but I heard them, yelling, whooping, like a pack on the hunt. One darted out, swinging that crowbar at the side. Metal screeched, and I veered, nearly clipping a pole. They weren't stopping, and I wasn't sure I could shake them. Bakersfield's sprawl was a maze, and I was trapped in it. The radio crackled, sudden, loud, spitting garbled voices, then cut out. My phone was dead now, screen black. I kept driving, sweat stinging my eyes, praying for a cop, a trucker, anything. Those laughs echoed behind me. Close, too close. I'd seen rough crews before, gangs, drifters, but this was horror movie level, a nightmare I couldn't wake from. They dropped back, or I thought they did. The road opened up, 58 stretching ahead, and I pushed the van harder, shaking, gasping. My hands were locked on the wheel, mind racing. Cal? Where's Cal? I needed out, but those faces, that crowbar, they were seared in. Something was seriously wrong here, and I was still breathing their air. Highway 58 blurred past, the van rattling like it'd blow a gasket any second. I kept the pedal down, headlights cutting through the dark, those whoops fading behind me. My chest heaved, lungs burning, pure terror driving me now. Bakersfield's lights shrank in the rear view, but I didn't feel safe, not even close. Those guys weren't normal, not just punks with a grudge. They moved like they owned the night, and I'd crossed them bad. The engine coughed, a sick sputter, and I cursed, smacking the dash. Hold on, girl. It steadied, but the gas gauge was dipping, half a tank, maybe less. I aimed for a truck stop I'd passed coming in, maybe 10 miles out. Cops, lights, people, my shot at getting clear. The road was empty, just me and the hum of tires, but every shadow made me flinch, expecting that crowbar again. Then I saw it. Headlights behind me, low and fast, closing in. My gut sank. A beat-up pickup, rusted, weaving like they were drunk, or worse. I floored it, the van groaning, but they gained, engine roaring. A face leaned out, same pale grin, eyes glinting, and something flew, smashing my taillight. Glass sprayed, and I swerved, tires screaming. They were playing with me, a life-or-death game I couldn't win. The pickup rammed me, hard, rear bumper crunching. I fishtailed, fighting the wheel, and they laughed, loud enough to hear over the engine. I swung off 58, onto a side road. Dirt, narrow, a gamble. The van bounced, tools crashing in the back, and they followed, headlights blinding in my mirrors. I dodged a ditch, barely, and saw a sign. Kern River, 2 miles. Maybe I could lose them there. Dust choked the air, the van shaking apart, but I kept going. They rammed again, metal screeching, and the back doors buckled. I yelled, swerving wild, and clipped a tree, side mirror gone, sparks flying. The river loomed ahead, dark and wide, a bridge coming up fast. I had one shot. Cross it, pray they didn't. The pickup lunged, grazing me, and I pushed the van to its limit, bridge rattling under me. I made it, barely, and they skidded, stopping short. I didn't slow, barreling down the road, river glinting beside me. My hands shook, blood pounding in my ears, but the headlights faded. Maybe they didn't like water, maybe I'd lucked out. The truck stop glowed ahead, neon and semis, and I aimed for it, engine coughing like it was dying. I wasn't safe yet, but I was still kicking. The van lurched into the lot, gravel crunching, and I slammed the brakes, coasting to a stop near a rig. My chest heaved, sweat soaking my shirt. I grabbed the wrench, kicked the door open, and stumbled out, scanning the dark. Nothing. No pickup, no grins, just truckers and fluorescent hum. I banged on a cab, yelling for help, and a grizzled guy hopped down, eyeing me like I'd lost it. Cops, call M. I gasped, leaning on the van. He nodded, pulling a phone, and I sank to the ground, catching my breath. The night was still, too still, and that sour stink lingered, faint but there. I'd escaped, but it didn't feel over. Those guys were out there, and I'd left a piece of myself on that road. Then I heard it. Tires, slow, rolling in from 58. My head snapped up, heart sinking. That pickup, creeping into the lot, lights off. They weren't done with me yet. I scrambled up, wrench raised, as the pickup idled at the lot's edge. The trucker, big guy, beard, maybe 40, yelled, "What the hell's going on?" and stepped toward me, phone still in hand. I pointed, voice shaking. Them, they're after me. The pickup's doors creaked open, 3 shapes spilling out, crowbar glinting under the neon. My stomach twisted, horror crashing back full force. I'd thought I'd lost them, but I'd just led them here. The trucker cursed, dialing faster, but they moved, slow, dragging, like they savored it. I bolted for the van, yelling, "Lock yourself in." He didn't. Dumbass squared up, shouting at them to back off. I dove inside, slamming the door, and fumbled for the keys. The engine was shot, wouldn't turn, and I heard it. A scream, cut short, wet, and final. I peeked out, trucker on the ground, crowbar buried in his chest, blood pooling fast. They turned to me, grinning, and my blood ran cold. I dragged this guy into my mess, my screw-up, my fault. One tapped the crowbar on the asphalt, slow, taunting, while another kicked the van, denting the side. I grabbed a hammer from my tools. Wrench wasn't enough now, and braced myself. The locks wouldn't hold forever, and they knew it. Bakersfield had chewed me up, and these bastards were the teeth. Cal's truck rolled in, beat up F-150 Fresno plates. Right then, headlights cutting the dark. He hopped out, beers in hand, yelling, "Riley, what the?" He froze, seeing them, and dropped the cans. "Get in," I screamed, but they moved fast. One swung at him, crowbar flashing, and Cal ducked, barely. He scrambled back, diving for his cab, and I kicked my door open, hammer raised. Dumb move, but I couldn't let him die too. I charged, swinging wild, and caught one in the arm. Bone cracked, and he howled, dropping a knife. Cal gunned his engine, yelling, "Go, go." I ran for him, but another grabbed me, yanking me back. His grip was iron, reeking of sweat and rot, and I twisted, slamming the hammer into his knee. He buckled, and I broke free, diving into Cal's passenger seat as he peeled out. The pickup roared after us, ramming Cal's tailgate. We swerved, tires screaming, and he cursed, "Who are these psychos?" I didn't answer, couldn't. Blood streaked my hands, not all mine, and guilt choked me. The trucker's dead eyes flashed in my head. My mistake, running here, thinking I'd be safe. They gained, grill snarling, and Cal took a hard turn, skidding onto a back road. We hit a straightaway, Cal pushing the truck past its limit, and the pickup kept coming, relentless. I saw a gas can in the back, Cal's spare, and had a stupid, desperate idea. "Slow down," I yelled, grabbing it. He shot me a look but eased off, and I climbed out the window, unscrewing the cap. They rammed us again, and I hurled it. Gas splashed their windshield, soaking the hood. Cal floored it, pulling ahead, and I flicked my lighter, last thing in my pocket, tossing it back. Flames erupted, a whoosh of orange, and the pickup swerved, crashing into a ditch, fire licking up. We didn't stop, speeding into the night, Bakersfield shrinking behind us. My hands shook, the hammer slick with blood, and Cal muttered, "You're insane, man." I slumped, staring out at the dark. The trucker's gone, Cal's alive, barely, and I'm still breathing. But those grins, that crowbar, they're burned in me. I'd run, fought, and lit them up, but it cost too much. South California's got its claws in my soul now, and I don't think I'll ever shake it loose. My name is Marcus Harlow, 32 years old, and I call Seattle home, at least on paper. Truth is, home for me is wherever I park my converted 2010 Sprinter van. I've been living the nomadic lifestyle for nearly 3 years now, documenting my adventures on a moderately successful YouTube channel. The freedom is intoxicating, but nobody tells you about the darker moments of van life. The ones that leave you questioning every decision you've ever made. I was heading north for a change, wanting to capture some footage of the Canadian Rockies for my summer content. Calgary seemed like a good staging point, big enough city to blend in, but close enough to the wilderness I was after. The border crossing went smoother than expected. The guard barely glanced at my meticulously organized van interior before waving me through with a bored expression. The early June weather was deceptively pleasant as I rolled into Calgary's outskirts. Golden afternoon light painted the distant mountains, promising adventure and the kind of content my subscribers craved. I stopped at a grocery store to stock up, chatting with a friendly cashier named Ellie who recommended some local spots. "But stay away from the old industrial district," she warned, a disturbing seriousness crossing her previously cheerful face. "People go missing there sometimes." I laughed it off as local superstition. Every city has its urban legends, its forbidden zones that locals warn about. Part of me even thought it might make for interesting B-roll, the contrast between natural beauty and urban decay. I thanked Ellie and headed back to my van, unaware of how her casual warning would haunt me later. The city had designated overnight parking areas for travelers, but they were expensive and crowded with noisy RVs. I'd gotten good at finding quiet, unobtrusive spots to park for free. Urban stealth camping was practically an art form, and I'd mastered it through trial and error. Police rarely bothered with a clean, inconspicuous van as long as you moved regularly and didn't draw attention. As the sun began to set, I drove around scouting locations. The city lights blinked on one by one, creating that magical twilight atmosphere photographers call the blue hour. I found myself drawn to the edges of the industrial district Ellie had mentioned, rows of abandoned warehouses and manufacturing plants standing like silent sentinels against the darkening sky. Something about their weathered facades and broken windows called to me. The photographer in me couldn't resist. I found a perfect spot between two defunct businesses, a former textile factory and what looked like an old meat processing plant. The small access road was hidden from the main thoroughfare, and thick overgrowth provided additional cover. No streetlights meant complete darkness, perfect for remaining undetected. I backed my van against the brick wall of the textile factory, ensuring my side door opened toward the building rather than the road. It was quiet, secluded, and felt surprisingly peaceful despite the desolate surroundings. After a simple dinner of pasta and canned sauce, I edited footage on my laptop until my eyes grew heavy. The only sounds were the occasional distant rumble of freight trains and the gentle tapping of tree branches against the van's roof. I converted my seating area to a bed, drew the blackout curtains tight, and drifted off to sleep, blissfully unaware that I'd parked in exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong time. I woke with a jolt around 2 a.m. to the sound of metal scraping against metal. My heart hammered in my chest as I lay perfectly still, straining my ears. There it was again, a slow, deliberate scratching along the driver's side of my van. My first thought was vandals or thieves casing my vehicle. This wasn't my first encounter with nighttime troublemakers, but something about the methodical nature of the sound sent ice through my veins. I reached for my phone, keeping movements slow and silent under my blanket. The battery showed 12%. I'd forgotten to plug it in before falling asleep. Rookie mistake. The scratching stopped, replaced by what sounded like whispering. Not one voice, but several, speaking in hushed, urgent tones I couldn't quite make out. I held my breath, hoping they'd assume the van was empty and move on. Instead, I heard a soft thud against my back doors, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone testing the handle. My van was locked up tight, a habit born from necessity, but the realization that someone was actively trying to get in made my mouth go dry with fear. I had two choices: make noise to scare them off or remain silent and hope they'd leave. Neither option felt particularly safe. The industrial district stretched for blocks in every direction. Even if I called for help, who would hear me? The nearest occupied building was at least half a mile away. I could start the engine and drive off, but that would alert them to my presence if they didn't already know. Plus, I'd have to climb into the driver's seat, making myself visible through the windshield. The disturbing reality of my situation began to sink in. I was completely isolated. A sharp crack against my side window made me flinch. It wasn't loud enough to break the glass, more like someone tapping with something hard. Tap, tap, tap. A pause. Then again, tap, tap, tap. The deliberate rhythm was almost worse than an outright attack, carrying an unspoken message. We know you're in there. We can wait. I reached for the baseball bat I kept beside my bed, gripping it so tightly my knuckles turned white. The tapping stopped, and for one hopeful moment, I thought my visitors had given up. Then my van shifted slightly, the suspension creaking as weight was added to the roof. Footsteps moved slowly above me, pacing the length of my home on wheels. The sound was so unexpected, so invasive, that I had to clamp my hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. What kind of thieves climb on the roof? This behavior didn't fit any pattern I'd encountered before. Through a tiny gap in my blackout curtains, I caught a glimpse of movement outside, a pale face peering in, distorted by the curved glass of my side mirror. Our eyes met for one terrifying second before the figure ducked away. What haunts me still is the expression I saw, not malice or aggression, but a strange, detached curiosity, like a scientist observing a specimen. By 3 a.m., the noises had stopped. The silence that followed was almost worse than the harassment. I didn't dare move for another hour, half convinced they were still out there, waiting for me to lower my guard. When I finally mustered the courage to peek through my curtains, The industrial lot appeared empty under the pale moonlight. No figures, no vehicles, nothing to suggest I'd had visitors at all. Only a strange symbol scratched into the dirt beside my van. 3 concentric circles with a line drawn through them offered evidence that the night's events hadn't been a nightmare. As dawn broke, I finally started my engine with shaking hands. The scratching sounds had left visible marks along my van's exterior, long, deliberate gouges that couldn't have been made by any conventional tool. They formed no pattern I could discern, yet somehow didn't seem random either. I should have left immediately, driven straight out of Calgary without looking back. Instead, I made the foolish decision to investigate. Something about the calculated nature of the encounter left me with questions that overrode my better judgment. It's the kind of stupid choice people make in horror movies, the one that makes audiences groan. But curiosity has always been my downfall. I spent the morning driving aimlessly around Calgary, checking my mirrors constantly for any sign of being followed. The rational part of my brain tried to dismiss the previous night as local teens messing with an out-of-towner, but the gouges in my van's paint told a different story. Eventually, I parked at a busy coffee shop downtown, hoping the crowds would provide some safety while I researched the strange symbol I'd seen. After an hour hunched over my laptop, I found something disturbing. The symbol matched ritualistic markings associated with a local urban legend, something called the Collectors. According to forum posts from Calgary locals, they were supposedly a cult that operated in the abandoned industrial zone, targeting outsiders who ventured into their territory. Most accounts dismissed them as campfire stories meant to keep teenagers away from dangerous buildings, but a few posts described encounters with pale-faced figures and mentioned the 3-circle marking. One post in particular sent chills down my spine. A woman named Sarah claimed her brother had disappeared 3 years ago after urban exploring in the same area where I'd parked. The police found his car with that exact symbol scratched into the hood. Her post ended abruptly with, "They don't want your possessions. They collect experiences. They feed on fear." The thread was locked shortly after, the account deleted. I told myself it was elaborate fiction, just another creepypasta, but my vandalized van suggested otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You're parked in the wrong place again." My blood turned to ice. I scanned the coffee shop frantically, looking for anyone watching me, anyone on their phone who might have just sent the message. The barista caught my panicked expression and asked if everything was okay. When I showed her the text and mentioned where I'd stayed the previous night, the color drained from her face. "My cousin worked cleanup at the old Redbrook processing plant," she whispered, leaning close. "He found things there. Weird things. Rooms where they did. He wouldn't even tell me what. Just said people went in, but didn't come out the same. If they came out at all." She glanced around nervously before continuing. "The developers keep trying to demolish those buildings, but workers refuse to go there now. Too many accidents." I thanked her and left quickly, my coffee untouched. Back in my van, 3 more texts had arrived. The first contained my full name. The second listed my home address in Seattle. The third was just 2 words, "Tonight. Return." The fact that they knew who I was and where I lived sent panic coursing through me. I tried calling the number back, but an automated voice informed me it wasn't in service. By late afternoon, I'd convinced myself to leave Calgary altogether. I was packing up my equipment when my phone rang. Ellie, the cashier from yesterday. I hadn't given her my number. Before I could ask how she'd gotten it, she spoke in a rushed, frightened voice. "They've marked you. I saw your van. You need to come to 1432 Bonaventure Drive immediately. I can help." The line went dead before I could respond. Common sense screamed that this was a trap, but what choice did I have? Someone was clearly stalking me, and local law enforcement would likely dismiss my story as paranoia. I plugged the address into my GPS and drove across town, jumping at every car that stayed behind me for more than a few turns. The address led to an old community center in a quiet residential neighborhood. At least it wasn't another abandoned warehouse. Ellie was waiting outside, pacing nervously. "Thank God you came," she said, pulling me inside. The community center was empty except for an elderly janitor mopping the floor in a distant hallway. "My grandmother was part of a group that tracked them for years," she explained, leading me to a small office. "The Collectors have existed in Calgary since the slaughterhouses opened in the 1940s. They were workers once, human, but something changed them. She spread old newspaper clippings across a desk, disappearances dating back decades, all centered around the industrial district. Police photos showed the same three-circle symbol at various locations. They marked you, which means you have something they want, she said grimly. Something they need. The only way to break the connection is to destroy the original marking they left. The implications were clear. I would have to return to the place where I'd spent the previous night, the last place on Earth I wanted to go. Dusk fell as Ellie and I approached the industrial district in my van. The plan seemed simple enough. Find the symbol scratched in the dirt, destroy it completely, then get the hell out of Calgary. Ellie had brought salt, sage, and a small copper bowl for some kind of ritual she claimed would sever the connection. I remained skeptical but desperate enough to try anything. The area looked different in the fading light, more threatening somehow. Buildings that had seemed merely abandoned in daylight now loomed ominously, their broken windows like jagged teeth and decaying mouths. We parked a few blocks from my previous spot, planning to approach on foot for a quick escape if necessary. As I killed the engine, the absolute silence of the place pressed against my ears. No distant traffic, no birds, not even the wind made a sound. They'll be watching for your van, Ellie whispered as we crept through the overgrown lots. We need to be quick. I clutched my baseball bat while she carried a backpack with her ritual supplies. The route seemed longer on foot, each shadowy alley stretching endlessly before us. Twice we froze at sounds we couldn't identify, a metallic groan from inside a building, then what might have been footsteps crunching on broken glass somewhere behind us. When we finally reached the spot where I'd parked the previous night, my heart sank. The symbol was gone, the dirt disturbed as if deliberately smoothed over. This is bad, Ellie muttered, dropping to her knees and digging through her backpack. They're preparing for something. We need to make a protective circle. As she arranged her items, I scanned our surroundings, the hairs on my neck rising with the certainty that we were being observed. The first figure appeared silently at the corner of the textile factory, a tall, impossibly thin silhouette standing perfectly still. Then another emerged from behind a dumpster, and a third from inside a loading dock. Within minutes, we were surrounded by at least 7 figures, all maintaining the same distance, all watching with that same detached curiosity I'd glimpsed in the mirror. Don't run, Ellie whispered fiercely. They want you to run. That's how they feed. She worked faster, arranging salt in a circle around us while chanting something under her breath. The figures began a slow, synchronized approach, moving with an unnatural fluidity that made my skin crawl. As they drew closer, I could make out more details. Pale, almost translucent skin stretched over elongated features, eyes too large and too dark for human faces. One stepped into a patch of moonlight, and I bit back a scream. What I had taken for a person was something else entirely. Its limbs bent at impossible angles, joints protruding sharply beneath papery skin. Worse still was the face, features that approximated humanity but missed in subtle, horrifying ways. The mouth stretched too wide, revealing teeth filed to points. It wore tattered clothing that might once have been a slaughterhouse uniform, now stained with substances I didn't want to identify. The ritual isn't working, Ellie hissed, panic rising in her voice. Something's wrong. They've changed the rules. The creatures were barely 10 yards away now, moving with that same terrible precision. I raised my bat, knowing it would be useless against so many. Then Ellie grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in painfully. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know what else to do. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow as I saw her expression shift from fear to resignation. They were going to take someone from town if they didn't get what they marked, she said, backing away from me. Better an outsider than one of us. She stepped backward out of the salt circle, moving toward the creatures without fear. They parted to let her pass, never taking their eyes off me. Pure survival instinct took over. I bolted between 2 of the creatures, swinging my bat wildly to create space. One grabbed at my jacket, tearing the sleeve with surprising strength, but momentum carried me through. I sprinted through the maze of abandoned buildings, the sound of inhuman movement close behind. They didn't run as humans do. Their pursuit was a series of bounding leaps and spider-like crawls that allowed them to use vertical surfaces as easily as horizontal ones. I cut through a half-collapsed warehouse, jumping over debris and sliding under fallen beams. A creature dropped from the ceiling directly in my path, its limbs unfolding like some terrible insect. I swung the bat with everything I had, connecting solidly with its head. The impact sent shockwaves up my arms, but the thing barely staggered. Worse, the bat stuck to its skin, adhering like glue. I was forced to release my only weapon as I dodged around it. Somehow I found myself back on the access road, my van visible in the distance. I pushed myself harder, lungs burning, legs threatening to give out. Behind me, the scuttling pursuit grew louder. I fumbled for my keys as I ran, nearly dropping them twice. Reaching the van, I wrenched the driver's door open and threw myself inside, locking it just as the first creatures reached me. They surrounded the vehicle, their bodies pressing against every window, those two wide mouths opening and closing soundlessly. I jammed the key into the ignition, praying the engine would start. For one horrible moment, nothing happened. Then the motor roared to life. I threw the van into reverse, feeling resistance as I backed over something soft that definitely wasn't pavement. Shifting to drive, I floored the accelerator, not caring about direction as long as it was away. The creatures didn't give up easily. Two clung to the roof, their long fingers punching through the metal like it was cardboard. Another hung from my side mirror, its face pressed against my window with that same detached, curious expression even as I swerved violently to dislodge it. I drove recklessly through the narrow alleys between buildings, scraping the van's sides against walls to remove my unwanted passengers. I finally broke free of the industrial district, tires screeching as I hit the main road. In my rearview mirror, I could see figures standing at the edge of the abandoned zone, watching but not following. They had reached the limit of their territory. I kept driving, pushing well above the speed limit, heading directly for the highway that would take me south. I didn't care about my belongings left at the community center or the damage to my van. All that mattered was putting distance between myself and Calgary. I drove for hours without stopping, crossing the U.S. border at a remote checkpoint just before dawn. The border agent noted my disheveled appearance and damaged van, but seemed satisfied with my story about hitting a deer. Once back in Washington state, I pulled into a rest stop, hands still shaking too badly to continue. I hadn't slept in over 24 hours, but adrenaline kept me wired, jumping at every sound outside my van. When I finally checked my phone, dozens of missed calls and texts waited, all from Ellie's number. I almost threw the phone away, but morbid curiosity made me open the most recent message. It contained only a video file. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. The footage showed the community center's office where Ellie had shown me the newspaper clippings. She sat facing the camera, eyes wide with genuine terror. "Marcus, if you're watching this, I'm already gone," she began, voice trembling. "They're not what I thought. My grandmother's research was wrong, or incomplete. The collectors don't just exist in the industrial zone. They've infiltrated the town. They look like us now, some of them. They made me lure you there. Said they'd take my little brother if I didn't." Tears streamed down her face. "I don't expect forgiveness, but you need to know, the mark isn't just on your van. It's on you now. They can track you wherever." She looked up suddenly, fear overtaking her features. The video ended with her scrambling away from something off camera. I settled in my stomach. I rushed to the van's small bathroom mirror, examining my reflection for any sign of the three-circle mark. Nothing on my face or neck. Relief washed over me until I turned slightly and caught sight of my left shoulder blade through my torn shirt. There it was, 3 concentric circles with a line through them, not drawn or scratched, but somehow embedded in my skin like a brand. I returned to Seattle only long enough to empty my bank accounts and grab emergency supplies from my storage unit. The first week on the run, I convinced myself I was safe. The collectors were bound to their territory in Calgary, limited by whatever supernatural rules governed them. Then my laptop screen began showing brief flickers of pale faces before returning to normal. My phone would ring with Ellie's number, but only static came through when I answered. 2 weeks after escaping Calgary, I pulled into a campground in rural Oregon, hoping the remote location would provide some peace. I awoke that night to find 3 new texts from Ellie's number. The first showed a picture of me sleeping, taken through my van window just hours earlier. The second was an address in Seattle, my parents' home. The third simply read, "Choose." The implications were clear. They were offering me a trade, myself for my family's safety. I called my parents immediately, begging them to leave town for a few days. They were confused but agreed after hearing the panic in my voice. I turned my van around and headed north, back toward the nightmare I'd barely escaped. I'm recording this now from a motel just south of the Canadian border. Tomorrow I'll cross over and return to Calgary, to the industrial district where this all began. I've left copies of this account with friends, instructing them to make it public if I don't check in within 48 hours. Not that it will matter, no one will believe it. I've searched online for any mention of the collectors and found that posts referencing them have been systematically removed. Ellie's social media profiles no longer exist. Even the community center at 1432 Bonaventure Drive appears to have been demolished years ago, according to Calgary City records. Last night, I finally understood what Ellie meant about them feeding on fear. I felt it, a strange drawing sensation as I lay paralyzed with terror in my motel bed, watching a shadowy figure slowly materialize in the corner of my room. It wasn't just observing my fear, it was somehow extracting it, savoring it like a delicacy. When it finally approached after hours of watching, I saw its face clearly for the first time without the chaos of the chase. Behind the inhuman features, I recognized Ellie's eyes, looking back at me with that same detached curiosity. I don't know if I'm driving toward my death tomorrow. Perhaps death would be a mercy compared to whatever the collectors have planned. All I know is that the mark on my shoulder blade has begun to change, the circles widening as if making room for something to emerge. My only hope is that by returning voluntarily, I might negotiate some kind of terms, my compliance in exchange for leaving my family alone. It's a desperate gamble, but I'm out of options. If anyone finds this and is traveling through Canada, stay away from Calgary's industrial district. Don't park anywhere near the old Redbrook processing plant or the textile factory beside it. And if you ever see 3 concentric circles with a line through them, run. Don't look back. Don't investigate. Just run. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some predators have been hunting us since long before we built cities over their feeding grounds. And some of them have learned to wear our faces. My name is Drew Callahan. I'm 32 years old, and I've been living in my converted Sprinter van for the past 3 years. Vancouver has been home base, but I've always been drawn to the open road. That's the whole point of van life, right? Freedom. The ability to pick up and go wherever the wind takes you. At least that's what I tell myself on the good days. On the bad days, I wonder if I'm just running from something I can't quite name. It was late September when I decided to head to Banff. The tourists would be thinning out, and I could score some amazing photos for my moderately successful travel blog. The mountains in autumn are something else. All those golden larches against the backdrop of snow-dusted peaks. I'd been saving up for this trip, knowing I'd need to splurge on park fees and maybe the occasional campground when stealth camping wasn't an option. My van, which I lovingly named Roamer, is nothing fancy, but it's home. I've retrofitted it with everything I need. A platform bed that converts to a small seating area, a tiny kitchenette with a single burner stove, and enough solar power to keep my camera gear and laptop charged. The exterior is purposely nondescript, white with no windows in the cargo area, perfect for blending in when I need to park somewhere unofficial for the night. I met up with my old college buddy, Mika Chun, in Calgary before heading into the mountains. She'd been working as a wildlife biologist in the area and knew all the best spots that weren't in the guidebooks. The park rangers have been extra vigilant lately. She warned me over coffee. There have been some strange incidents in the backcountry. Animals found. She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Let's just say not all predators walk on 4 legs. We planned to meet up in a few days at Lake Minnewanka. Mika needed to check some remote cameras for her research, and I was eager to photograph the lake at sunrise. Just stick to the designated areas, she cautioned as we parted ways. And Drew, don't go wandering off alone after dark. The mountains have ways of making people disappear. I laughed it off at the time. Mika always did have a flair for the dramatic. The drive into Banff was everything I'd hoped for. The Canadian Rockies loomed larger than life, and the afternoon light painted everything in a warm, golden hue. I stopped several times just to breathe it all in. The crisp air, the smell of pine and earth, the absolute quiet that seems to exist only in places this remote. I felt that familiar tingle of excitement that comes with entering somewhere new, somewhere wild. I followed the Trans-Canada Highway, windows down despite the chill, music blasting. This was freedom. This was living. I'd stealth camp tonight and figure out my exact route in the morning. Mika had mentioned a service road off the Bow Valley Parkway that rangers rarely patrolled. Perfect for one night, she'd said with a wink. Just be gone by sunrise. As I turned off the main highway, the trees closed in, creating a tunnel of darkness despite the fact that sunset was still an hour away. My phone lost signal almost immediately, but I wasn't concerned. I'd downloaded offline maps and had my GPS unit as backup. What I hadn't counted on was the feeling of being watched that settled over me as soon as I left the main road behind. I chalked it up to the natural wariness that comes with entering predator country. After all, these woods were home to wolves, cougars, and bears. But something about the silence felt expectant, like the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I found the spot Mika had described about 2 miles down the service road, a small clearing just big enough for roamer, screened from view by a stand of lodgepole pines. Perfect for stealth camping. I backed in, making sure I had a quick exit route if needed. Old habits die hard. I'd had my share of midnight knocks from security guards and angry property owners over the years. As I set up my simple camp, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had been growing since I turned off the highway. The forest was too quiet. No birds calling, no rustle of small animals in the underbrush. Just a heavy, oppressive silence that seemed to press in on me from all sides. I'm not usually the jumpy type. You can't be if you live this lifestyle, but something felt off. I double-checked the locks on the van doors before starting dinner, just in case. The sun sank below the mountains faster than I expected, plunging the clearing into deep shadow while the sky still held light. I fired up my little stove and heated a can of chili, trying to ignore how the normal sounds of my dinner prep seemed unnaturally loud in the stillness. That's when I noticed the scratches on a nearby tree, long, deep gouges in the bark, about 7 feet up. Too high for a bear, unless it was standing on its hind legs. And bear claw marks typically have a distinct pattern. These were different, almost deliberate, like someone or something had been marking territory. I was washing my dishes when I first heard it, a low, rhythmic sound that I initially mistook for my own heartbeat. But this was external, coming from somewhere in the darkening woods. It took me a moment to place it, drumming, a steady, methodical beat that seemed to resonate through the ground beneath my feet. Indigenous drumming isn't uncommon in these parts, but there were no settlements nearby, no campgrounds where people might be gathered, just wilderness. I tried to convince myself it was just other campers, perhaps a group who'd hiked into some spot I wasn't aware of. But the sound had an ancient quality to it, something primal that raised the hair on the back of my neck. I retreated into roamer, locking the doors behind me. The drumming continued, neither growing louder nor fading away, a constant reminder that I wasn't alone out here. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling of the van, listening. Around midnight, the drumming finally stopped, but the silence that followed was somehow worse. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke with a start at 3:17 a.m., the time glowing on my digital clock with eerie precision. Something had woken me. A sound. I held my breath, listening. There it was again, a scraping sound against the outside of the van. Not the random brush of a tree branch. This was deliberate. Slow, methodical strokes against the metal, like someone or something dragging claws or fingernails along the side of my home. I lay frozen, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. The scraping continued, moving from the rear of the van toward the front, toward the cab where I lay. Dawn couldn't come fast enough. As the first gray light filtered through the trees, I made a decision. I'd skip photographing this area and head straight to Lake Minnewanka to meet Mika. I needed to be around people, to shake this growing sense of dread that had settled over me. I fired up Romer's engine, relieved when it started on the first try. But as I began to pull away, my headlights illuminated something that stopped me cold. A circle of stones had been placed around my van during the night. Not random rocks, but deliberately positioned stones forming a perfect circle, with strange symbols scratched into the dirt between them. I'd definitely not driven through such an arrangement when I arrived. Someone had been here while I slept, moving silently enough that I'd heard nothing but that rhythmic scraping. I gunned the engine and drove straight through the circle, not caring about the stones that crunched beneath my tires. I needed to get out of there. Now, The service road seemed longer on the way out, the trees pressing closer, branches reaching like gnarled fingers toward Romer's windows. I white-knuckled the steering wheel, pushing the van faster than was safe on the uneven track. The GPS indicated I was approaching the junction with the Bow Valley Parkway, but when I reached what should have been the turn, I found only more forest. Somehow, I'd missed the main road. I stopped and checked my position again. According to the GPS, I was right where I needed to be, but the road ahead looked nothing like the one I'd driven in on. It was narrower, rougher, the trees on either side forming an almost perfect tunnel. Had I taken a wrong turn in my haste to leave? Impossible. There had been no other roads, no forks, no junctions, just a straight shot back to the parkway. A cold knot formed in my stomach as I realized the GPS was showing me driving in an entirely different direction than I thought I was heading. I decided to turn around, to backtrack to my campsite and try again. But as I executed a careful three-point turn on the narrow road, my headlights swept across something that made my blood run cold. A figure stood at the edge of the tree line, tall, unnaturally still. For a split second, I thought it might be a park ranger, but then my lights fully illuminated it. It wasn't human, not quite. The proportions were wrong. Too tall, too thin, with limbs that seemed longer than they should be. And its face. I can't bring myself to describe what I saw, or thought I saw, in that brief moment before it stepped back into the shadows. I abandoned my turn and sped forward, away from the figure, my heart hammering in my chest. Whatever I'd seen, I wanted no part of it. The road began to deteriorate, rocks and roots threatening to tear out Romer's undercarriage. I should have stopped, should have turned back, but the memory of that figure kept me pressing forward. Better to risk damage to the van than face what waited behind me. The trees suddenly gave way to a small clearing, and I stopped short. My headlights illuminated a sight that defied explanation. In the center of the clearing stood a circle of stones identical to the one that had been placed around my van during the night. But this one was older, the stones larger, partially sunken into the earth as if they'd been there for centuries. And in the center of the circle stood a crude altar of some kind, dark stains marking its surface. It was then that I noticed the silence. Complete, absolute silence. No wind in the trees, no distant calls of animals, not even the sound of my own engine, though I could feel the vibration through the steering wheel. It was as if sound itself had been sucked from the world, leaving only a vacuum. And in that vacuum, I felt a presence, an ancient malevolence that seemed to permeate the very air. Movement caught my eye, shapes emerging from the tree line on all sides of the clearing. The same tall, distorted figures, 5 or 6 of them, moving with an unnatural grace toward my van. Their movements were wrong somehow, jerky yet fluid, like footage played at the wrong speed. I fumbled for the gear shift, throwing Romer into reverse, but the engine sputtered and died. I turned the key, nothing. Tried again, still nothing. The battery was dead, though it had been fine moments before. One of the figures approached my driver's side window, moving with that same unsettling gait. I caught glimpses of pale skin, of limbs that bent at impossible angles, of a face that seemed to shift and change even as I looked at it. It raised a hand, too many fingers, too long, too thin, and pressed it against the glass. The window fogged with cold, frost patterns spreading from the point of contact. A voice filled my head, though the creature's mouth didn't move. "We've been waiting for you, Drew Callahan," it said, my name sounding wrong in its mouth, like it had been torn apart and put back together incorrectly. The wheel turns. The sacrifice returns. How did it know my name? I hadn't told anyone in Banff besides Mika. I scrambled away from the window, across to the passenger side of the van. The other figures had surrounded Romer now, each placing their elongated hands against the metal. The temperature inside plummeted, my breath clouding in front of me. I could see frost forming on the interior surfaces, spreading with unnatural speed. One by one, they began to rock the van, gently at first, then with increasing force. The rocking intensified, the van swaying dangerously. I grabbed my phone, still no signal, but maybe the flashlight would help. As I activated it, the creatures outside hissed in unison, pulling back momentarily from the beam. Light. They didn't like light. I scrambled through my belongings, finding my high-powered flashlight, the one I use for night photography. I switched it on, aiming it at the figure still pressing against my window. The reaction was immediate and disturbing. The creature's skin seemed to bubble and smoke where the light touched it, its form becoming even more distorted as it recoiled. A high-pitched keening filled the air, cutting through the unnatural silence. I took advantage of their momentary retreat, diving into the back of the van to retrieve my emergency flares. If light hurt them, fire might do even more damage. I needed to get Romer started. Abandoning the van in this wilderness, especially with those things out there, wasn't an option. I popped the hood release and, after taking a deep breath, flung open the driver's door, flashlight beam sweeping wildly before me. The creatures had retreated to the edge of the clearing, their forms half hidden by shadow, but I could feel their eyes on me as I moved to the front of the van. Opening the hood, I aimed my light at the engine. Nothing seemed obviously wrong. No disconnected cables, no visible damage. On a hunch, I checked the battery terminals. They were covered in a strange, crystalline frost, though the night wasn't cold enough to explain it. I used my sleeve to wipe it away, burning my skin in the process. The frost was unnaturally cold, seeming to burn rather than chill. A movement in my peripheral vision made me swing the flashlight around. One of the creatures had broken from the group, advancing despite the light. In the direct beam, I could see it more clearly, and immediately wished I couldn't. Its body seemed composed of shadows and angles that shouldn't exist, its limbs bending in ways that defied anatomy. But its face was the worst part. It wore Mika's features, stretched across a skull that was too large, too elongated to be human. A parody of my friend's face, with eyes that were black pits reflecting nothing. "You shouldn't have come here, Drew," it said in a voice that was almost, but not quite Mika's. "This place has been waiting for someone like you. Someone untethered, someone no one would miss." It took another step forward, the flashlight beam seeming to affect it less now. The old one's hunger. The wheel turns. The sacrifice returns. I fumbled with the flares, managing to light one. The sudden, harsh red light caused the creature to shriek and retreat. I tossed the flare toward the tree line where the others waited, buying myself some time. Back at the engine, I reconnected the battery cables, which had somehow come loose again despite my just having checked them. I slid back into the driver's seat, said a prayer to whatever might be listening, and turned the key. The engine roared to life, louder than it should have been in the unnatural silence of the clearing. I slammed the van into gear and hit the gas, aiming for the gap between two of the watching figures. They didn't move, didn't try to avoid Romer as I accelerated toward them. At the last second, I realized they weren't going to move. They wanted me to hit them. I swerved, missing them by inches, the van sliding on the uneven ground. As I passed, one reached out with those two long fingers, catching the side mirror. It didn't break off. Instead, the creature held on, suddenly on the side of my van, its distorted face pressed against my window. Up close, the wrongness of it was even more apparent. It wasn't wearing Mika's face. It was as if it had stolen pieces of her, incorporating them into its own horrific visage. I screamed, jerking the wheel sharply. The van hit a tree, the impact throwing the creature free. I didn't stop to see where it landed, just kept driving, branches scraping against Romer's sides as I crashed through the underbrush. There was no road anymore. I was blindly forcing my way through the forest, desperation overriding any concern for the damage I was doing to my home. The trees thinned suddenly, and I burst onto what I recognized with overwhelming relief as the Bow Valley Parkway. I turned toward Banff, pressing the accelerator to the floor. In my rearview mirror, I could see the dark line of trees receding, but no sign of pursuit. Had I escaped? Or were they letting me go for some reason? The thought sent another chill through me. My phone suddenly chirped, signal restored. I nearly wept with relief. I needed to warn Mika. If those things were using her image, perhaps she was in danger too. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. "Mika, it's Drew. Something's wrong in the forest. Don't go to Lake Minnewanka. Meet me in town. Please call me as soon as you get this." My voice sounded strange even to my own ears, high-pitched, trembling with barely contained panic. I drove toward Banff, the lights of civilization never looking so beautiful. But as I approached the town limits, my relief began to fade. Something wasn't right. The town looked different somehow. The buildings in the wrong places, streets laid out in patterns I didn't recognize from my drive in yesterday. Had I come in from a different direction? Was I so disoriented that I didn't recognize where I was? I pulled over at what appeared to be a visitor center, though I didn't remember seeing it on my way into the park. The building was dark, closed for the night, but there was a large map of the area displayed outside. I approached it, flashlight in hand, trying to orient myself. What I saw made no sense. According to the map, Lake Minnewanka wasn't where I remembered it being. In fact, nothing was where it should have been. Trails, roads, landmarks, all in the wrong places. I was studying the map, trying to make sense of the disorientation, when my phone rang. Mika's name flashed on the screen. I answered immediately, relief flooding through me. "Mika, thank God. Where are you?" There was static on the line, her voice breaking up. "Drew? Can barely hear. Where are you?" "Been trying, since yesterday." "I'm in Banff," I said. "At some visitor center. Listen, something happened out in the woods." "Something? I can't explain it, but I don't think you should go out to check those cameras." More static, then her voice came through clearer. "What are you talking about?" "I've been at Lake Minnewanka since yesterday afternoon. That's where we agreed to meet. I thought something happened to you." A cold knot formed in my stomach. "That's not possible. We were supposed to meet there tomorrow. We had coffee in Calgary yesterday." The silence on the other end lasted too long. When Mika finally spoke, her voice was different, cautious, concerned. "Drew, we haven't had coffee in Calgary. I haven't seen you in months. Are you okay?" My mind reeled. Had I imagined our meeting? No, it had been real. I remembered specific details, what she wore, what we discussed, her warning about strange incidents in the backcountry. "Mika, what day is it?" "It's Tuesday, October 12th. That wasn't possible. I'd arrived in Banff on September 28th. That would mean, "Mika, I'm missing 2 weeks." Another long pause. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you. Don't move." I ended the call, leaning against my van for support as the implications crashed over me. 2 weeks, gone. What had happened to me in that clearing? What were those things? And why couldn't I remember anything after trying to escape them? I became aware of a strange smell coming from inside Romer. Something musty and organic, like wet earth and decay. I hadn't noticed it before, too amped up on adrenaline and fear. I approached the side door cautiously, sliding it open. The interior of my van was transformed. The neat, compact living space I created was gone, replaced by something else entirely. The walls were covered in the same strange symbols I'd seen scratched into the dirt around that stone circle. My belongings were arranged in disturbing tableaus, clothes torn and reassembled into crude effigies, photographs defaced with more symbols, scratched into the glossy surfaces. But worst of all was what hung from the ceiling. Dozens of small bundles of twigs, bones, and feathers, bound with what looked horribly like human hair. Primitive, terrifying talismans that swayed gently, though there was no breeze. And written on the wall above my bed, in what I desperately hoped wasn't blood, were the words, "The wheel turns. The sacrifice returns." I staggered backward, away from the van, away from the evidence that something had been living in my home, using my things for what must have been days. Had I been there too? Had I participated in whatever ritual madness had transformed Romer into this chamber of horrors? I couldn't remember, and that was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. I heard a car approaching and turned, expecting to see Mika's familiar Subaru. Instead, a park ranger's vehicle pulled up, lights flashing. The ranger who stepped out wasn't in any mood for conversation. His hand rested on his sidearm as he approached. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from the vehicle and keep your hands where I can see them." "Officer, thank God. Something's happened." I began, but he cut me off. "Drew Callahan?" When I nodded, his expression hardened. "We've been looking for you for 2 weeks. You're wanted for questioning in connection with the disappearance of Mika Chun." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What?" "No, I just spoke to her. She's fine. She's on her way here." The ranger's expression was a mixture of suspicion and something else. Pity, perhaps. "Sir, Mika Chin's vehicle was found abandoned at Lake Minnewanka 2 weeks ago. There's been no sign of her since. Her phone was in the car. Nobody's spoken to her. But I had just spoken to her. Hadn't I?" I tried to reach for my phone to show him the call log, but as I moved, his hand tightened on his weapon. "Slowly, sir." I carefully pulled out my phone, but when I looked at the screen, there was no record of Mika's call. No outgoing call to her voicemail either. It was as if the conversation had never happened. "Officer, please, you have to believe me. Something's out there in the woods. Something not natural. Even as the words left my mouth, I knew how they sounded. The ranger's face gave nothing away. "We're going to need to search your vehicle, sir." "Yes, please do," I said, stepping aside. "You'll see. It's been changed. There are symbols, things hanging from the ceiling. Someone's been living in there, or something." The ranger approached Romer cautiously, flashlight drawn. He slid open the side door and aimed the beam inside. I waited for his reaction to the transformed interior, but it didn't come. He methodically checked the van, under the bed, in the storage compartments. When he emerged, his expression was even grimmer than before. "Sir, I need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." "What? Why? Did you see what's in there?" "I saw camping gear, some clothes, photography equipment, and a lot of blood, sir. Human blood. That wasn't possible." I peered past him into my van. It was exactly as I'd left it before heading to Banff. Clean, organized, normal. No symbols, no effigies, no disturbing talismans. But now that he mentioned it, I could see dark stains on my bed platform, on the walls. How had I not noticed before? As the ranger cuffed me, reading me my rights, a Park Service SUV pulled up. 2 more rangers got out, and with them was what appeared to be a body bag on a stretcher. They moved with the solemn efficiency of people performing a grim but necessary task. "We found her then?" my ranger asked. One of the newcomers nodded. "Hikers reported a strange smell near Cascade Creek. Animals had gotten to her, but the ID matches. Mika. It had to be Mika. But how? I'd just spoken to her. Hadn't I? The memories of the past few weeks, or were they hours, suddenly seemed fluid, unreliable. Had I imagined the creatures in the woods? The transformed van? The phone call? What was real and what was delusion? As they led me to the ranger's vehicle, I caught a glimpse of myself in its polished surface. For a split second, my reflection wasn't my own. The face looking back at me wore my features, but wrong somehow, stretched, distorted. And the eyes were black pits, reflecting nothing. "The wheel turns," I whispered, the words coming unbidden to my lips. "The sacrifice returns." The ranger paused, looking at me strangely. "What did you say?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, I heard that rhythmic drumming again, faint but growing louder. The ranger didn't seem to notice it. Nobody did. It was in my head, had always been in my head. Or perhaps I was in its head. I wasn't sure anymore where Drew Callahan ended and the ancient, patient malevolence of the Banff wilderness began. As they placed me in the back of the ranger's vehicle, I looked up at the night sky one last time. The stars seemed to pulse in time with the drumming, forming patterns, symbols I somehow recognized. The wheel was turning. It always had been, and I had never escaped that clearing, had never escaped the circle of stones. Part of me was still there and always would be, with the old ones who hunger in the dark places of the world. And somewhere in the forests of Banff, something wearing Drew Callahan's face lives on. I'm Ethan, 32 years old, and I live in New York City, a place that never sleeps, but I've always craved a change from that constant buzz. When the idea of van life hit me, I jumped at the chance to explore a new, quieter life, even if it meant trading skyscrapers for vast stretches of open land. I set my sights on Refleter, South Canada, a place renowned for its eerie beauty and unsettling legends. The decision wasn't just about escaping the city noise. It was about seeking a raw, real adventure where every night might hide a secret, a horror waiting to unfold in the dark. This move was both thrilling and a little scary, leaving me with a mix of excitement and a deep, gnawing curiosity about what lay ahead. Rolling out of New York, I embraced the unknown with my trusty van, my mobile home, and a couple of close friends who shared my restless spirit. I wasn't alone in this pursuit. There was Jacob Mills, a rugged soul with a quick wit and a penchant for exploring the unexplored, and Lisa Harmon, whose calm demeanor masked an inner hunger for adrenaline and mystery. Together, we were ready for a journey that promised both freedom and the ominous chill of the unknown. As we drove through winding country roads toward Refleter, South Canada, every mile heightened my sense of anticipation, mixed with a disturbing whisper of foreboding that something wasn't quite right. The long hours behind the wheel gave me ample time to reflect on my decision and the drastic shift in lifestyle I had chosen. I could almost feel the weight of every mile I left behind, a life of routine and safety crumbling slowly as I ventured into territories where the line between normalcy and horror blurred. The stories I'd heard about the area weren't just urban legends. They were disturbing, scary accounts of inexplicable events and eerie happenings, woven into the fabric of local folklore. I felt both exhilarated and unsettled, as if I were about to step into a real-life thriller where each moment teetered on the edge of danger. Driving deeper into the countryside, the familiar skyline of New York was replaced by vast, open landscapes and silent roads stretching into the horizon. The solitude of the journey was both a blessing and a curse, giving me time to think while also letting unsettling thoughts creep in. I started noticing subtle hints, a distant, unexplained noise, a fleeting shadow that vanished as quickly as it appeared, and each instance added another layer of tension to the ride. Even the radio seemed to hum with an eerie, unspoken warning. I couldn't shake off the feeling that my van, a symbol of my newfound freedom, was also my ticket into a realm of horror and mystery. As dusk approached, the scenery transformed dramatically. The soft glow of the setting sun gave way to creeping darkness, and the once inviting landscape morphed into a realm of uncertainty. Parking the van on a quiet, secluded spot near a dense forest, I felt an unexpected shiver run down my spine. The air was crisp, and the silence around me felt almost too thick to be natural. Every rustle in the underbrush and every whisper of wind sent a jolt of alertness through my body, as if the night itself was alive and watching. This moment, charged with a mix of beauty and dread, marked the start of an experience that would soon turn deeply disturbing. I settled into my van with a blend of excitement and apprehension, preparing myself for a night that promised more than just rest. With my laptop, a few snacks, and a journal in hand, I was determined to document every strange occurrence, every whisper of horror that might emerge from the dark. The idea of recording my thoughts felt almost therapeutic, like sharing a secret with an old friend. As I scribbled down my initial impressions, I couldn't help but ask myself if the mysterious tranquility of Refleeter, South Canada, was merely a facade hiding a scarier truth. That thought lingered in my mind, making the otherwise routine act of settling in feel eerily significant. The temperature dropped as night fully embraced the campsite, and a sense of isolation wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. Outside, the world was silent but for the occasional disturbing rustle in the trees, a sound that could be mistaken for the scurrying of animals or something far more sinister. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a figure lurking in the dim glow of distant streetlights. The van's interior felt like a cocoon against the cold, yet it offered no comfort against the unsettling feeling that I was being drawn into a story that was already written in ominous strokes. Each minute felt prolonged, charged with a suspense that bordered on the terrifying. In that moment of solitary vulnerability, I found myself questioning every decision that led me here. The journey from New York had been long and filled with moments of exhilaration, yet the isolated reality of Refleeter, South Canada presented a different kind of challenge, one that was deeply personal and undeniably scary. I began to wonder if the local legends of inexplicable phenomena and dark forces were simply tales, or if they held a kernel of disturbing truth. My thoughts raced as I tried to convince myself that this was just the beginning of a new adventure, not a prelude to something horrifying and unexplainable. The unsettling mix of fear and fascination was both disturbing and oddly compelling. As I settled in for what I hoped would be a quiet night of reflection, I couldn't help but feel that this was only the start of a long, twisted journey. The haunting silence outside was punctuated by the promise of eerie encounters, and the excitement of venturing into the unknown clashed with a deep-seated sense of foreboding. I left my journal open on the dashboard, ready to capture every moment of what might soon become a disturbing tale of horror. Even as I tried to sleep, my mind churned with thoughts of the mysterious events that could unfold at any moment. And so, with a heavy heart and a racing mind, I braced myself for a night that might just change everything. I woke up way too early, way too alert. It wasn't the cold, even though the frost had crept up every inch of the van windows overnight. It was something else, this weird heaviness in my chest. I'm not someone who spooks easily, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted during the night. You ever wake up feeling like you missed something important? Like the world had moved on while you were sleeping, and now you're behind? That's exactly what it felt like. I didn't hear anything out of place, but that was the problem. It was too quiet, like the trees around me were holding their breath. I opened the side door and stepped into the cold. The ground was damp, not just dewy, like something or someone had been pacing around. The grass was flattened in places near the fire pit I hadn't even used. Jacob and Lisa hadn't woken up yet in their vans, which were parked just a few feet from mine. I thought about waking them, but I didn't want to sound paranoid. Still, something didn't sit right with me. So I grabbed my flashlight and circled the site. Nothing obvious. But that silence, it had weight. You know how forests usually hum with birds, bugs, leaves? This one was dead still, and it felt wrong. Back inside the van, I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just travel fatigue or the unfamiliar place messing with my head. I made some instant coffee and opened my laptop to check emails, just to reconnect with normal life for a second. But the signal was garbage. Not just weak, gone. Even my hotspot couldn't pull a single bar. That was the first real issue. We'd chosen this spot because it wasn't too far from a small town, but now it felt like we'd slipped off the map. Still, I figured it was temporary, maybe a tower down. I didn't want to panic. Yet, by the time Jacob woke up, I'd already scouted the woods a bit further out. He walked over rubbing his eyes, wearing one slipper and a hoodie, completely unaware of the creeping dread in the air. "You look like you saw a ghost," he joked, stretching. I didn't even laugh, just told him about the flattened grass and the quiet. He waved it off, said maybe a deer had wandered through or something. But I could tell. He looked over his shoulder a little more than usual that morning. Lisa joined us a bit later, and even she noticed how off the forest felt. We all agreed to stay alert, but we didn't really do anything about it. That was our mistake. Later that afternoon, we tried to head into town for groceries and a signal. That's when the second problem hit. The van wouldn't start. Not dead, just sputtering like it was choking on air. The lights flickered, the dashboard blinked, and then, nothing. Jacob's van started fine, so did Lisa's. We thought maybe my battery was dying, but it had been replaced 2 months ago. That's when Jacob said something that gave me chills. Could be electrical interference. He was half joking, but there was something behind his eyes. He'd felt it too, that subtle, disturbing sense that the environment wasn't right. With my van down, we packed into Jacob's and drove toward the nearest town, just to check if we were losing it. That drive, it should have taken 20 minutes. Took nearly 45. Roads didn't look the same, signs were faded, some were completely gone. Like no one had been maintaining anything in years. The town itself, when we got there, was even worse. Empty streets, dusty windows, a gas station with the lights still on, but no one inside. The air smelled stale, like mold and rust. I remember saying out loud, "This place feels abandoned." Lisa just nodded, her face pale. We grabbed a few supplies from the station, left cash on the counter because, honestly, we didn't know what else to do. Still no cell signal, even in town. That's when Jacob suggested we leave the area. Maybe head further south, find another spot. But my van was still back there, dead. I wasn't about to leave it behind. That night, back at camp, we sat around a small fire and tried to pretend everything was okay. Lisa told a story about a childhood trip to Nova Scotia, trying to lighten the mood. But none of us laughed, because somewhere, in the dark behind the trees, something was moving. Not like an animal, more like pacing. Measured, intentional, and it never got closer. It just stayed there. We tried to sleep. I laid in my van staring at the ceiling, ears tuned to every sound. I heard something that night. Not footsteps, not voices. Something worse. Something wet. Like dragging. Like someone or something was pulling something heavy through the underbrush. I wanted to scream for Jacob or Lisa, but I couldn't move. It wasn't sleep paralysis. I was awake. Just too scared to breathe, let alone talk. I remember gripping the knife I kept under my mattress so tight my hand went numb. And that sound didn't stop until just before sunrise. We never talked about it the next morning. No one mentioned it. But we were different. We looked over our shoulders more. We spoke softer. Lisa stopped wearing her headphones while cooking breakfast. Jacob kept the hatchet out, even when he didn't need it. We all felt it. even if no one said it out loud yet. That something was wrong here, that we'd parked in a place we never should have found. By the third night, the forest felt like it was watching us. I know that sounds nuts, but I swear, it wasn't just paranoia. Something had shifted, and it wasn't just in our heads. It was in the air. You ever been in a place so quiet, even your heartbeat feels too loud? That's where we were. I kept catching myself holding my breath just to listen, and I wasn't even sure what I was listening for anymore. We were all jumpy, walking on eggshells. Every snap of a twig felt like a scream. That evening, the fire barely stayed lit. No wind, no breeze, but the flame kept flickering like it was struggling against something we couldn't see. Lisa was the first to say something weird. She pointed to the edge of the forest and said, "Do you see that?" Jacob and I looked. Nothing, but she was shaking. Said it looked like someone crouched out there, low to the ground, like they were waiting. When we asked her to describe it, she said she couldn't, that every time she tried, it slipped away from her memory, like her brain wouldn't let her picture it. I didn't believe her, not at first, but later I saw it too. Not clearly, just movement, too low to be human, too smooth to be an animal, like someone sliding between the trees without touching a single branch. The way you see something out the corner of your eye, but when you look straight at it, it's gone. I got this gut-deep dread, like I wasn't just being watched, I was being studied. Like whatever it was, it already knew everything about me. My van, my habits, when I slept, where I peed in the woods. That kind of thing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I heard Jacob's door creak open around 2 a.m. I peeked through my curtain, saw him standing barefoot on the grass, looking toward the trees. I whispered his name, but he didn't move, just kept staring, like he was in a trance. When I finally opened the door to go out there, he turned suddenly, walked straight back into his van, and locked the door without saying a word. The next morning, he claimed he didn't remember any of it. Said I must have been dreaming, but I know what I saw, and I noticed he avoided looking at the woods all day. Lisa tried to leave that afternoon. She packed up and said she couldn't take it anymore. We tried to talk her down, but she was shaking and pale and wouldn't stop looking over her shoulder. She took off down the dirt road toward the highway. About 15 minutes later, she came running back, barefoot, screaming. Her hands were cut up, and her shirt was torn like she'd fallen into a bush or something. But she kept repeating the same thing, "It won't let me leave." It moved the road, and that phrase stuck with me in the worst way possible. Because when we walked with her to the trailhead, the road was gone. There was just forest, thick, tangled trees where the dirt path had been. I walked forward, pushing past branches, expecting to pop out onto gravel or even a clearing, but it just went deeper and darker, like the forest had swallowed the exit. Jacob said it was probably the wrong direction, but we'd walked this path twice before. It was the same spot, and now it didn't exist. We all stood there in silence. Nobody said it, but we were thinking the same thing. We were trapped. That night, we heard it. Not dragging, not pacing. This time it spoke, not in words. More like whispers layered over whispers, like 100 mouths murmuring just under the sound of wind. I swear to you, they were whispering our names. I heard Ethan over and over again. Sometimes low, like breath in my ear. Sometimes far away, like someone calling from a distance. Lisa curled up in her van and sobbed. Jacob locked himself in and kept the headlights on. I sat up with a flashlight and knife and didn't blink until the sun came up. We made a decision in the morning. We were going to hike out, on foot, toward the town. No vans, no road, just straight through the woods using Jacob's compass and some maps. We packed light, water, snacks, jackets. I took a machete just in case. Lisa didn't say a word, just followed. The woods felt wrong the second we stepped off camp. Like the trees were leaning closer, and the sun couldn't get through the branches right. We walked for an hour, then 2. We should have been halfway to the nearest logging road. But the forest just looped. Same trees, same down log, same rock formation. We were walking in circles, without turning. Lisa broke down crying. Said she heard her mom calling her name from somewhere behind us. Her mom's been dead 5 years. Jacob lost it too. He started yelling at nothing, slashing at the air like something was crawling on him. I had to pull him back before he hurt himself. That's when we saw it. Finally, not just movement. A figure, half-hidden, pale-skinned, crouched low, just outside the trees. Watching, and smiling. I didn't scream. None of us did. That thing, whatever it was, looked almost human, but something was off. Like its limbs were too long, its face too still. The grin never moved, just stretched across its face like it had been carved there. It crouched there, frozen, like it was waiting for us to move first. Lisa gasped, whispered, "That's what I saw that first night." The words barely left her mouth before the thing crawled backward into the trees. Not walked, crawled. Fast, quiet, vanished. We took off. I don't remember deciding to run. We just did. Our feet tore through leaves and mud, ducking under branches, smashing through whatever was in the way. Every snap behind us made my blood go cold. The woods weren't silent anymore. They were alive. We heard crashing, snapping, something howling or laughing. I still can't tell which it was. I remember Lisa screaming my name. Jacob tripped and slammed face first into a tree. I dragged him up by the arm, yelling, "Move." We ran for what felt like hours, but the sun hadn't moved an inch in the sky. That's when it hit me. Time wasn't working right anymore. Like we were stuck in a loop, being toyed with. We ended up back at camp, even though we'd been running in the opposite direction. The vans were still there, but something was wrong with them. The windows were fogged up from the inside, and on mine, there were handprints. Not adult-sized, child-sized, all over, pressed flat against the glass like they were trying to get out, not in. Jacob was bleeding bad from his forehead, and Lisa had scratches across her neck, deep and raw, like fingers had grabbed her. She didn't say a word, just sat down in the dirt and rocked back and forth, hugging her knees. I tried starting my van again, even though I knew it wouldn't work. Nothing, just dead silence from the engine. Jacob's van cranked, once, twice, then the battery drained right in front of us. The headlights flickered and died. Something was feeding off us. The fear, the energy, maybe even our will to escape. The fire pit we hadn't touched in days was burning. No one lit it. It was just on. No smoke, no smell, just flames. And around it, I swear to God, were footprints in the dirt, circling it, barefoot, deep, like someone heavy had been stomping around it over and over. But no one had been there. We were all together. And then Jacob pointed at something on the van wall. Scratches. Long, deep grooves in the paint, spelling out a single word, "Stay." We lost it. All three of us. Lisa started praying, sobbing. Jacob kicked his van door open so hard it broke the hinge. I grabbed the machete and screamed into the trees. "What do you want from us?" No answer. Just that whispering. It started again. But this time, it was inside the van. My name, Jacob's, Lisa's. Over and over, like a lullaby from hell. The whispers got louder until I couldn't even hear myself think. I was about to crack when Jacob shouted, "Get in." We're pushing the van. We pushed his van with everything we had. Tires spinning in the mud, our hands slipping, hearts pounding so hard I thought mine would explode. And then, miracle. It started. The engine roared, sputtered, but caught. I jumped in, pulled Lisa with me. Jacob floored it. We didn't even close the back doors. We tore through the trees, bouncing over roots and rocks, headlights barely cutting through the mist that had suddenly settled all around us. The forest didn't want us to leave. It moved. Trees seemed to shift in front of us, branches reaching across the path like arms. At one point, we swerved so hard to avoid a stump that the whole van tipped on two wheels. We screamed. Lisa was clutching my arm, so hard her nails drew blood. Jacob's face was locked in a mix of rage and panic, like he was fighting the forest itself. The whispering was inside the van now. No joke. I heard it in the vents, under the seats. Breathing that wasn't ours. Finally, we hit pavement. Real road. And just like that, the noise stopped. No whispers. No movement. The trees behind us looked still. Empty. But we didn't stop. We kept driving. 10 miles. 15. Until we hit the gas station we'd found days ago. Except now, it was different. Lights off. Doors chained shut. Windows black. And the worst part? The cash we'd left on the counter was still there. Same bills, same placement. Like no one had touched this place in years. Lisa threw up in the parking lot. Jacob sat in the driver's seat, shaking, both hands glued to the wheel. I walked inside, broken glass crunching under my boots. Everything was coated in dust, like we were the first people to step foot in there since the 80s. But I swear, I heard the radio behind the counter click on, just for a second, and a voice, not a station, not music, whispered, "You can't leave what you brought with you." I don't know how long we stood there. I don't even remember leaving. I just know we didn't go back for the other vans. Or the campsite. We left it all behind. And even now, I don't think we ever really escaped. Because later that night, as we pulled into a motel 2 towns over, I saw something in the rearview mirror. Not a car, not headlights. A figure, just standing in the road, grinning. I thought that after fleeing the motel, our nightmare was behind us. But nothing ever is as simple as it seems. The cold rain pounded our van as we tried to drive through a narrow country road, hoping to put the horrors of the night behind us. Every puddle we splashed through reflected twisted images of ourselves, haunted by the memory of that relentless whispering. I clutched the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting to see that grinning figure lurking in the darkness. The past few days had already been a series of deadly mistakes, and I had a sinking feeling that the worst was yet to come. The rain didn't wash away the terror. It only made it more tangible. I felt like every droplet was a reminder of the things we had witnessed, a macabre punctuation to our ordeal. Lisa, silent and withdrawn, stared out the window as if trying to decipher a code in the falling water. Jacob sat in the back, his eyes wide and haunted by what he had experienced. In that suffocating silence, the van became a capsule of fear and despair, a moving prison with no escape. Every mile we drove, every turn of the road, reminded me that sometimes you can't outrun the past, even when it's screaming in your ears. We eventually reached a dilapidated farmhouse on the outskirts of a tiny, forgotten town. It looked abandoned, with boarded-up windows and a creaking porch, but it was our only refuge from the relentless storm. As soon as we stepped inside, the oppressive aura of the building hit us like a freight train. The air was thick with decay and despair, and every step we took stirred up memories of the voices that haunted our van. I could almost feel a presence watching us from the darkness, waiting for us to let our guard down. Even in the relative safety of that broken-down sanctuary, terror had a way of seeping in through the cracks. Inside the farmhouse, the silence was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it offered a brief respite from the chaos of the road. On the other, it was filled with the echoes of our frantic escape. I found an old, dusty mirror hanging crookedly on a wall, and for a moment, I was mesmerized by my own reflection, my eyes, bloodshot and desperate, staring back at me. I couldn't tell if it was the fear or the exhaustion that made my face look so alien. There was something almost disturbing about that moment, like the mirror was trying to communicate a secret that I wasn't ready to hear. I asked myself if the farmhouse was a safe haven or just another trap. As night fell again, we huddled together in the dim light of a single, flickering bulb. The storm outside was relentless, pounding the roof as if trying to force its way in. I tried to keep my thoughts organized, to convince myself that we'd finally reached a safe place, but the uneasy feeling persisted. It was as if the farmhouse was part of the same twisted plan that had haunted us since Refleeter, South Canada. Every creak of the old wooden floors, every distant groan of the wind, sent my mind racing with dark possibilities. I recalled the chilling words that had echoed in the van. You can't leave what you brought with you. In the dead of night, I awoke to the sound of soft, deliberate footsteps on the creaking floorboards. My heart hammered as I realized that we were not alone. I fumbled for my machete, every instinct screaming at me to be ready for a fight. The footsteps moved closer, and I could almost sense an otherworldly presence guiding them. It was as if the farmhouse itself was alive, its very walls pulsing with a sinister heartbeat. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the culmination of our deadly mistake, the moment when our actions had set something dark and terrible in motion. I stepped out of my room, drawn by a mix of dread and a desperate need to confront whatever was coming. In the dim corridor, I caught a glimpse of a shadow flit across the wall, too quick to be human. My mind raced with memories of the forest, of the whispering voices, and that eerie grin in the rearview mirror. Every step felt like I was walking on the edge of a blade, the danger intensifying with each passing moment. The farmhouse, with all its decay and forgotten history, suddenly seemed less like a refuge and more like the stage for our final act, a tragic climax that was already set in motion. As I reached the front door, the sound of breaking glass shattered the brief silence, and I froze. Behind me, Lisa's muffled cry confirmed that I wasn't imagining things. I turned back slowly and saw the dark silhouette of a figure moving in the periphery, a figure that bore a disturbing resemblance to the one we had encountered on that treacherous night in the woods. In that heart-stopping moment, I realized that our struggle was far from over. We had made a deadly mistake by thinking we could ever outrun the horror that clung to us like a curse. The farmhouse, the storm, the endless terror. They were all pieces of a puzzle that had only just begun to reveal its grim design. Before I could process any further, the lights in the farmhouse flickered violently, plunging us into an abyss of darkness. A guttural, chilling whisper reverberated through the halls, calling out our names in a sinister chorus. My heart pounded like a drum, and every instinct screamed to run. But deep down, I knew that escaping was not an option. This was our fate, sealed by the choices we'd made and the horrors we'd unleashed. And in that moment of paralyzing terror, I realized that some mistakes are too grave to ever be undone.